from our number 20 overall bet right now. So I'm sweating over here a little bit.
Right. Let me just jump in real quick because I just got to bring attention to something.
Mm-hmm.
The Chargers are on the clock.
They are indeed.
Rashawn Slater
Yes.
is still available
What a dream.
for the Los Angeles
Who would
Chargers.
have thought?
Never in my life would I have imagined that this situation would have happened. I thought Rashawn Slater's, he could have went as early as 5 and I wouldn't have been necessarily surprised. And so the fact that the Chargers can sit here and hopefully take a Slater to insert a left tackle and give Justin Herbert a left tackle of the future, I mean, I'm hoping this is the pick.
All of a sudden, that offensive line's amazing, right?
Right,
I mean, you look at one of the worst offensive lines in football last year. Now you got, hopefully, a healthy Brian Bulaga. You got Matt Filer. You got Corey Linsley. And now you got Rashawn Slater. I mean, that. If you're a Chargers fan, you could not ask for anything more.
I mean, if they don't pick Slater, I'm thinking about a guy like Kwity Paye. I know they need a lot of edge rush help. I'm thinking about even Caleb Farley. I know the injuries are concerning. Corners are a huge need, especially in Brandon Staley's offense or defense.
Brentley, I have great news for you. Rashawn Slater is the pick.
Brentley's been talking about this one for so long. He said, he's like every conversation that we have had about the Chargers this week, he's like, hey man, who are they going to go? Like, do they like Darius? Could they go with an edge? Could they go with a cornerback? I know they really like corner, but then like at the end of every conversation, you're like, yeah, I mean, but if like Slater's it's not even going to be a debate.
Always when people ask me who are the Chargers picking, we're assuming Sewell and Slater are gone. And so for Slater to fall to 13, giving this team who found their franchise quarterback last year, and now they can potentially find their franchise left tackle a year later, what more could you ask for? I mean, Slater, and look, I'm a Sewell guy, but Slater's floor is higher than Sewell's. He is technically proficient, outstanding balance, outstanding punch, outstanding hands, outstanding feet. He does everything you want. And the best thing about this guy is he has versatility.
Yep.
He could play anywhere along this offensive line.
Sure.
They're getting a 10-year starter. His bust potential to me is almost zero.
Right.
You look at what he did in 2019 against Chase Young. It was a clinic. And you saw Chase Young dominate left tackles in the NFL from day one.
I'll say this about the Chargers' offensive line. They've remade this, and this is long overdue. It kind of spoiled the end of the Phillip Rivers era, and credit to them for not letting it spoil the growth of Justin Herbert, because now with Rashawn Slater, they've added Corey Linsley, they've added Matt Filer, they've added Odea Boucher, and they had at right tackle returning Brian Bulaga. All right, we got it figured out. It took long enough, but here we are. Justin Herbert has a legitimate offensive line, and good for them, because that could have really stunted his development.
Anybody else that they could have legitimately considered here? We've talked about positions that they might look after, like corner if a guy fell, edge, but was there anybody that was going to come close to Slater for him?
Well, I think at this point, with the perception of Slater being what it was across the league, this is probably the case of a BPA. The corners being gone did not help. Maybe you could get into the specifics of Christian Darrisaw and his fit at left tackle stylistically versus the fit of Rashawn Slater. But Darrisaw, and I know, Jordan, you and I talked about this beforehand, has some questions, at least relative to Rashawn Slater and how perceived of a safe pick that he is. Yeah. So I think that really played into this decision to make sure, hey, let's get the best available offensive tackle or offensive lineman on the board, with Rashawn Slater being the second best one in this year's class.
Yeah, and you have to protect your investment in Justin Herbert, just because we know with these young quarterbacks, yes, they can run around a little bit, but if you have to have that franchise left tackle in place or some form of offensive line in place. And Tom Telesco has been outstanding with these offensive line additions that he has made this offseason. And with Slater, I think he's a guy that's capable of playing all 5 positions. Even though he's only played left tackle during his career at Northwestern, you can fill him in at any position, and I think he'll be just fine.
Dre?
I like the pick, especially with them losing Sam Tevy. I think it's a great pick for him. As what's been stated, Slater is someone who can play all 5 spots if given the opportunity, but most importantly, you protect your franchise quarterback. I think that's what they're about to do.
So I think one thing that's really understated here, and this has been talked about a little bit in the pre-draft process by Daniel Jeremiah, it's not how good your best offensive lineman is. It's how bad your worst offensive line is.
for sure.
And for Rashawn Slater, who has been billed as a guy who can play all 5 spots along the front, regardless of what happens with durability, if the Chargers endure an injury or two along the offensive line, having a guy that you feel confident in to play multiple spots and be able to make sure we are not taking major losses at numerous spots along the offensive line by playing musical chairs, I think that's critical to making sure that you have the best available offensive line that you have. That's why you see swing tackles paid so well and utility offensive linemen who can play tackle guard paid so well. Those guys in their versatility is going to allow you to play musical chairs and find your best combination of 5 when things go off the rails. And show me an offensive line that has all 5 starters play all 16 games in an entire NFL season. It just doesn't happen. That's the reality of the position.
Let's face it. The Chargers are maybe the worst cursed injury team in the league. Happens every single year. So to your point, to think that injuries along the offensive line aren't going to happen, especially with the Chargers, would be foolish. And then honestly, another thing to point out is Tom Telesco said earlier this week, he actually likes Trey Pipkins, who's penciled in at left tackle right now. This Slater pick would allow the Chargers to have an open competition between Pipkins and Slater. If in the very, very, very small chance Pipkins were to win that battle, Slater can kick inside to left guard, and now your unit, as everyone here has mentioned, is drastically improved.
I mean, if Pipkins beats out Slater, then we're clearly talking about an ascended player.
Yep.
And that would be, man, one of the top 10 offensive lines in football, I feel like, projected. We've got the Minnesota Vikings on the board right now at 14. I'm going to go over to Jordan, because he's our resident Minnesota Vikings guy. What do you think about this board now with who is still on the board for?
It's the worst possible outcome for him.
All right.
Oh, it's a doomsday. We thought
Elijah Vera still there?
But why?
Well, just because they wanted the top 2 guys to fall to them, whether it was Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell, I thought they even would have taken Justin Fields if he was there at 14. But you still have Elijah Vera Tucker on the board. You still have Christian Darius on the board. And then you have a couple edge rushers in Kwity Paye and then also Jalen Phillips as well. So, yes, they have options, but there were some people that may have been higher up on their board. I know they probably were heartbroken that Slater went 1 pick ahead of them just because the offensive line tiers, I think at the top, of course, was Sewell and Slater. So that's why I said Slater was probably a heartbreaker for them to go 1 pick ahead of them. So I'll be shocked if it's not a trade like I've been saying before. I would be surprised if they pick at 14 just because they don't have the second-round pick.
They're not. The Jets just traded up to 14.
That makes sense.
So that is confirmed.
Wow.
Let's start brainstorming, guys.
Yeah.
Who's on the board here at number 14?
Pass rusher.
Pass rusher?
Kwity Paye, Jalen Phillips, one of the 2.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Caleb Farley, Greg Newsome. I mean, they need to
Could also. I think it's going to be one of those 4 guys, right?
Vera Tucker.
Trade him up for a guard.
Could be very
Trade him up for a guard.
I don't care if it's a guard. He played tackle in 2020, and you got to protect your investment in Zach Wilson. They did not pick up Sam Darnold.
Trey Harris is not part of the table for a guard. We talked for months about this.
He can play tackle.
I just said, though, you have to protect your franchise.
You have to protect your investment.
Interior pressure is Zach Wilson's Achilles heel.
Do we
Are we
think it's
taking a vote
Elijah Vera
here?
Tucker?
Are
Yeah.
we taking a vote here?
Do you think
What's
it's
the pressure?
Do you think
Is-
Elijah
is-
Vera Tucker?
No, I
is
don't think
no?
it's a take.
No.
I think it's Kwity
damaging
Paye.
for a young
Okay.
quarterback.
I had Elijah Vera
Pressure
Tucker in
in
my
your
mock
face.
to them at 23, so I'm going to say yes, Elijah Vera Tucker, so I can get the extra points.
I had Tevin Jenkins in my mock. And we have not talked about Tevin Jenkins at
haven't.
all yet, but
Right.
Tevin Jenkins at Oklahoma State is a real mauler. Pairing him with Mekhi Becton gives you 2 really physical dudes at offensive tackle.
How about the Jets, though? I just want to say, hopping in front of the Patriots. We've seen a lot of divisional trades popping in front of opponents. I feel like so far in this top 15, and so I wonder if they were looking at a prospect that the Patriots might have been taking, but I guess they were picking at 23, so there's a lot of teams in front of them. Could be. I think that it's one of those 5, maybe 6 if we throw in Tevin Jenkins.
But I'm
as
also
well.
torn though because the Jets, when you look at what they have, it's like they need help in multiple areas.
Right.
That's true.
This
So
is a team
it's
that needs help everywhere.
Everywhere.
Which is maybe a little bit of a surprise that they moved up 9 spots. I'll be interested to see what the price they paid to get up to 14 was when you consider the Jets have so many needs that they'd ideally like to fill as they get ready to kickstart a new regime here. So we'll see.
Hey,
Jordan, what do you think about the Vikings' overall draft call right now? Because Don't the Vikings have a lot of picks in like the mid rounds, day 3-ish?
Yeah, so you actually have 2 third-round picks and then 4 fourth-round picks. So you have a bunch of those late day 2, early day 3 picks. And I've said it all along. Rick Spielman's track record is too good in the second round not to recoup.
I got the pick.
That pick.
I got to interrupt you. It is Elijah Vera Tucker. Okay. It is Elijah Vera Tucker, the interior offensive lineman. Well, I shouldn't shortchange him there. I'll just say overall offensive lineman from USC going to the New York Jets. Not at 23, but at number 14. Joe, you're Cyan heavy here.
Don't play this.
Quarterback.
I love Elijah Vera Tucker. He's a top 15
You're gonna
player
play this
for me
game.
in this
Okay, cool.
class.
Go ahead.
And I love Joe Douglas. I wrote all about how much I loved his draft class this year. But this is a team with needs on top of needs at premium positions.
But wasn't this one of them? Offensive line?
Interior offensive line?
Hey, defensive tackles are getting faster. Might become a premium
Let me just say one thing. What did we open this whole production with? Talking about how important it is for these general managers, for these coaches, to surround their new young quarterbacks with good players to make sure they succeed. That is exactly what Joe Douglas just
Their
did.
CB1 is Bryce Hall.
That is exactly
And
what
I
Joe
just got
Douglas
done
just
saying there's
did.
13, 14 corners in my top 100.
I have 18 offensive linemen in my top 100.
Okay, and here comes the run because we've seen Slater, Vera Tucker come off the board. You got the Raiders coming up.
Raiders could be
who need some help.
Yeah, Tevin Jenkins
If you
here.
have the over on 6.5 offensive linemen, you have to be feeling good right now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You're definitely. I think that you're definitely gonna hit it. Anybody on this side of the table? Big Dick Drake's holding up the hand, so I'm
Sure.
going to you. That's very courteous. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I think as far as trends go, like you typically see like teams that draft a franchise guy, they typically the following pick is protection, either left tackle, guard. Like that's been a trend over the past like few years. So it had to have been this. I mean, A-gap pressure is important in the face of a young quarterback, so it makes sense. Great player too. Great player on the interior.
So we talked about Zach Wilson when this pick was made at 2, about the offensive line that he had at BYU and how physical it was, how much they controlled the line of scrimmage. You got Mekhi Becton, and now you're playing Elijah Vera Tucker next to him on the left side of the line, presumably.
Nasty, man.
Okay, I can get behind this.
We have
know?
forgotten. They traded up for him. They gave up 23, 66, and 86. They gave up 3 top 90 picks to get this guard.
All I heard is they didn't give up anything in the second round. They still have 33, right?
Yeah, but they gave up
32.
66 and 86 with all those needs. This is a lot to invest in a guard.
And I hope they make a pick at right tackle again at 34.
Kyle,
Fix that one up.
Kyle is just digging at
Fix
this
the line.
point. He's digging.
Listen, there's
We can't sit and have these conversations for 6 months about how you can find interior offensive linemen all throughout the draft and then praise the Jets for investing 3 premium selections in a guard.
So then why was Elijah Vera Tucker so high on your board?
Because he's a good football player.
Okay, then what's the problem?
Because it cost you 3
What's the
picks.
problem?
It cost you 3 picks, 3 premium picks to get a guard. They're you can always go to the well. The middle rounds, they always supply you with guards.
No, that
Not like Elijah Vera Tucker.
No, I disagree with that, Joe. I don't think it's as easy as it's made out to be to find these interior guards. I really don't.
No, there have been a ton of guards that you find late in the draft, 3rd, 4th rounds, who end up starting for you. So I do think that you can continue to find those guys late. But I think that Vera Tucker is on another level. I think this is a great player, and
Dre, this was our 14th rated player in this
right.
year's class.
No, he's a great player.
And they got him at 14.
Hold on. We're not like, and maybe this is a giant no, but we talk about Vera Tucker having a lot of versatility, played on the interior, then he kicked out to left tackle. I mean, do we not think this guy could be a right tackle? Clearly, you got Mekhi Becton at left. Like, can he potentially be a right tackle? Do you guys think so? Yeah, short answers, because we got to toss it, but yes or no?
No.
Don't think he could be a right tackle?
No.
All right, so he's staying at the interior. Joe's still mad about it. Fantasy guys, what do you guys think about this next pick?
Well, the next pick with the New England Patriots, number 15 overall, is quarterback Mac Jones. I mean, look, for so long during the draft process, the easy connection was Mac Jones to Kyle Shanahan. But lest we forget that the possible prototype of Mac Jones is also the pocket statue who goes for reads and goes through progressions in a timely manner,
Right.
is also with Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, and here with the New England Patriots.
Right. It's really the perfect fit for New England. You look at the type of style that Mac Jones has. You look at Tom Brady, who was there for such a long time.
Yep.
It couldn't be a better fit in New England. Obviously, maybe Bill Belichick would have liked Justin Fields. He doesn't fall there. Obviously, Chicago was that spot where everyone was looking at Mac Jones to fall to. He goes to New England at 15. That's a perfect fit for Bill Belichick in that system.
Look, the narrative around Mac Jones has been a difficult one throughout this process because we all thought Trey Lance was better, Justin Fields was better. Hey, guess what? So does the NFL. But now I love this fit for Mac Jones. Right now on Underdog, he has an ADP of 213. That's after Jared Goff, after Taysom Hill, above Andy Dalton, and above Drew Lock. If we can just compare that to Cam Newton at 168, I am the biggest Cam Newton fan, at least in this house, and maybe even in the nation. But I know that Cam Newton's career is coming to a close. Heck, this season it might be coming to a close. Mac Jones by week 4, week 6, week 8 makes so much sense behind a great offensive line that the Patriots have built. I think he's going to have tremendous rookie success as soon as he enters the lineup.
I agree, and you look at Jarrett Stidham as well. He's not a fit there
No.
after Cam Newton. Cam Newton's, like you said, his career is declining. I believe he comes in and competes right away. I think he wins the job in camp, and Cam Newton serves that mentor role for Mac Jones at the onset of his career. They don't have any loaded weapons as far as out wide with Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers. That's not going to scare anybody. But as far as their future down the line, however many years that Bill Belichick has cooped up in that brain of his, how many ever years he's going to be out there in Foxborough, it's going to be with Mac Jones, and he's their future under center.
Do you know what's, I think, an underlying storyline of this draft process and other draft processes was going to be how Bill Belichick reacted when he identified the next one at the quarterback spot, because all these other teams, all these other fan bases had gone through it over the last 2 decades. The Patriots have not had to do that at all. And we see other times teams trading up to number 3 or number 1 when they need a quarterback. Bill sat back at number 15. And I've heard whispers, I'm sure these guys have heard whispers, that he didn't tell a soul who they were picking. He didn't mention it to anyone. And I don't even know if he knew that Mac Jones was going to be there at 15.
Did anybody?
Right. So I'm very curious to hear what he's going to say. He's not going to tell us much. Right. But after this, just how much he valued Mac Jones in comparison to the rest of the group.
You look at his film. Just look at last year and how he did at Alabama. Many will say that Mac Jones' skill set really wasn't that great because of his weapons that he had around him at Alabama. Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris in the backfield. But you look at Mac Jones' skill set in New England, working under the tutelage of Josh McDaniels, working under the tutelage of Bill Belichick. What else can you say?
I cannot wait to hear what Ben Solak says about Mac Jones' fit with the New England Patriots. Ben, take it away.
What is this? We had every mock in the entire world with Justin Fields going up to the Patriots because they're the smart ones, and then Mac Jones with the Bears because they're the not-so-smart ones. It's flipped on its head. It's Mac Jones to the Patriots. And listen, this is a prototypical pocket passer, Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, and we thought that Bill Belichick was done with this mold. Cam Newton? Turns out he's not. He wants McCorkle Jones. That's his boy Nick Saban at Alabama. They're tight, and he told him, listen, Mac's a smart cookie. Mac can run your offense. Josh McDaniels, you got Jonnu Smith, you got Hunter Henry, you got Nelson Aguilar, you got Kendrick Bourne. Let's throw the ball around the yard a little bit. And Mac Jones did throw the ball around the yard a lot. His number 1 receiver, Jalen Waddle, went number 6. His number 2 receiver, Devontae Smith, went number 10. When you have talented receivers like that and a good offensive designer, you get wide open windows. 17% of Mac Jones' throws were into tight windows. One of the lowest numbers in this class. That's not bad. It's just a reminder that this offense was, it was about as good as that LSU Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase offense from 2 years ago. Steve Sarkisian has an NFL background, Matt Ryan inspired. They were able to open up wide throwing lanes, and not just in the shallow areas of the field. They did it deep as well. Only 30% of Mac Jones' throws were in the shallow area of the field, and that's an interesting thing when it comes to this New England offense under Josh McDaniels. We've typically seen that offense be Earhart-Perkins inspired. We've typically seen that be a shallow throw offense. Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, it's nickel and dime. And so when we see only 30% of Mac Jones' throws throws being shallow throws, it's a reminder that Mac Jones' deep accuracy is actually one of the best parts of his game. He's willing to push the ball down the field. That Alabama offense was able to open him up intermediate windows and deep windows. And so with the new weapons in New England, and with Mac's tendency and success to be an anticipatory thrower in the intermediate to deep areas of the field, this number's probably going to stay low, even with the New England offense that, usually throws the ball shallow. They've got new weapons. Bill Belichick's looking for life after Tom Brady. And Mac Jones, even though he doesn't have the strongest arm, is quite the impressive deep ball thrower. With that said, easy offense at Alabama, talented receivers at Alabama. This guy did not have to go beyond his first read very often. And when he did, he really, really struggled. Mac's one of the most accurate passers in the class, but oh boy, the ball placement beyond the first read, it's not pretty. 20 out of 100 is the lowest score I've ever given out in this metric. What that's going to tell you is that when Mac Jones is forced off his first read, he really struggles to throw accurate footballs that maximize yak and protect the ball from being picked on. Now, this can get better, but it did not get challenged in the college level, which was true of Josh Rosen. It was true of Dwayne Haskins. It was true of his predecessor, Tua Tagovailoa, all of whom experienced a little bit of struggle as they got to the NFL level. And so you need to watch. If NFL defenses can take Mac Jones off his first read, even with all the Patriots' new weapons, that's going to be a difficult aspect of his year one transition. And so, fifth quarterback off the board. He was the fifth most talented quarterback for me, for the TDN scouting staff, and that's what the numbers held. If anybody can get quarterback right, it's Bill Belichick. I got to believe in him and trust Josh McDaniels, but I will tell you that for all the gas Mac had, it's appropriate that he went as the fifth quarterback, and I'm not so sold that the long-term outlook for him is the Patriots starting quarterback, the next dynasty, the next Tom Brady. Ooh, it would take me a little bit more convincing than that. So McCorkle, Mac Jones at 15 to the New England Patriots. We're almost halfway done, scouting team. I want to hear what you guys have to think about these next upcoming picks.
So the Patriots, coming off their first losing season since 2000 when Bill Belichick was hired. They also missed the playoffs. Pretty bad year. But adding Mac Jones into the mix, into this quarterback room with Cam Newton, who was re-signed for a one-year deal, how does this set them up to move in the right direction?
Well, I don't want to steal Jordan's thunder here, and I do want to let you get a chance to talk about the dynamics of the skill sets between Mac Jones and Cam Newton and how those offenses are going to operate differently. But the thing that stands out the most to me is it's like you're betting on Mac Jones to be the next Tom Brady style operator of this offense. And granted, he has a great endorsement from Steve Sarkisian, who said at the end of that season, I've never given a quarterback the kind of control of my offense like I gave Mac Jones. So that's the good news with the Mac Jones selection here at 15. But you think about the quarterbacks that went in front of him and compare their physical skill sets to Mac Jones, and you're really essentially betting on his football intelligence and his ability to stay efficient and quote-unquote on schedule being the trump card and investing a top 15 selection in that. And I guess I kind of just think that that's a risky proposition to take with the top 15 selection. And I understand you don't want to be in quarterback purgatory. There's a perceived top 5 quarterback that's available to you at 15, so I get it. But the physical appeal of Mac Jones sides on the style of play of Tom Brady. And anytime you're taking a guy in today's modern NFL to be that kind of quarterback, I think there's a very large boom or bust potential there.
Yeah, there is. And I can see why they selected Mac Jones at 15, because I'm not saying Mac Jones is Tom Brady, but stylistically, they've won with a quarterback like Mac Jones in years past. So maybe they're thinking maybe we can get a similar guy, we can mold him in a similar way that we did with Tom Brady. Now, as you said, that's a risky proposition just because traditional pocket passers that aren't very mobile outside of the pocket or outside the parameters of the pocket have not been very successful in
Jordan,
the past.
we gotta cut you off because we just learned the Falcons, St. Birds, same thing. The Cardinals selection at number 16. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. It is linebacker Zaven Collins, and this is chalk for us in the intel that we had. We figured that the Cardinals were going to be in on a couple of guys that are now already off the board, and so this Zaven Collins selection makes a lot of sense. Anybody have this in their mocks?
I got to hear from Dre on this because he's plugged in with the Cardinals, and I got to hear his thoughts.
We got back-to-back linebackers, Dre, in the first round for the Cardinals.
Right, I think that this is a very interesting pick, and I feel like the Cardinals have very little direction because they just drafted Simmons to be an inside linebacker. It was not necessarily a 3-4 fit for him. Now you're drafting Zaven, who is probably best as a 4-3 stack guy. And while he is a good player, he's great against the pass, he's great against the run. This is 2 consecutive years of drafting a first-round linebacker. I'm just curious if they have any identity on defense and direction as a football team. So it is a very intriguing pick, but I do like the player. Just don't know if it's a fit with what they want to do and with how they drafted Simmons in the first round last year as well.
So I want to jump in real quick. Dre talked about being a 4-3 stat guy, right? Mm-hmm. And Zaven Collins, I believe, for the course of his career, only took like 150 snaps on the edge across the entirety of his career at Tulsa. So we talk about his versatility and all the things that he can do. He's 260 pounds. He showed up at the pro day at 270. You're like, oh, okay, we'll play this guy on the line of scrimmage and so. He didn't really do that.
Right.
He was really good in coverage for a big linebacker, but he wasn't asked to play on the line of scrimmage a whole bunch. So I think it'll be interesting when you think about Arizona and the vacancy that was there. It was Hassan Reddick, who was a smaller linebacker, who was asked to play in a pressure-type role. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily see a direct correlation between the vacancy that Hassan Reddick left and what Zaven Collins was asked to do and what he did well at Tulsa. So I think that's the most fascinating layer here for me. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. We all like Zaven Collins.
Right.
We think he's a good football player.
Absolutely.
It's just a question of, okay, how do you fit these pieces of the puzzle together? And I think that's the most interesting thing.
Maybe that's the answer, is Arizona wants to set themselves up for maximum versatility with their defense, where whatever you want to toss at them, they have the personnel to run even front, odd front, amoeba fronts, and just be really versatile, particularly with the front seven. Now, folks, this cornerback situation, yikes. So they better hope they get after the quarterback with their investments in J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones coming back, and hopefully Zaven Collins can give them some juice as a pass rusher. Jordan Phillips coming back healthy this year should help them as well, but I think they've done enough here for this front seven. The attention has got to shift to cornerback, because we talked so long about replacing, not necessarily replacing, but getting a compliment to Patrick Peterson at cornerback. Well, they never did that. Now they have to replace Patrick Peterson. So to me, I'm interested to see how they piece this secondary together to match what they've done in the front seven.
How do we feel about Arizona, a team with only 5 draft picks going into the night? We figured that there were a couple of players that they really wanted, like I said before, that are probably off the board that they didn't have the chance to select. They made this pick here. Are we very surprised at that? Of course, it matters who's still on the board and who's calling to trade up, but I felt like Arizona was a prime team to trade down. Bradley, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the old saying is, in order to trade back, you need someone to trade up.
Takes 2 to tango.
Well,
Yeah, correct.
all the quarterbacks are now gone. The main 2 corners are all gone. Which players are teams really targeting? Quiddy Pay's still available. Mm-hmm. Jalen Phillips is still available.
Right.
Christian Darius is still available. Caleb Farley, if teams are comfortable with the medical, we're starting to have that conversation. We are starting to get into the point where we're going to be mentioning Caleb Farley's name. Pick after pick after pick. Because purely on talent, he should have been drafted a long time ago.
Right.
And so I'm not sure if the Cardinals could have traded back. I think it kind of seems like Zaven Collins was their guy from the get. But
I wonder if they just loved him that much. That they were just
They
like,
must
hey,
have.
doesn't matter.
I think it's just very interesting that for the second consecutive year, they're drafting linebackers, 2 linebackers that don't necessarily ideally fit their scheme.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. We've got a Raiders pick in here at number 17.
Can we talk about this real quick?
Yeah, we can.
The Raiders are a wild ride every single year. The Raiders! So I'm just kind of curious what everybody thinks is coming down the pipe.
it's going to be O-line. It has to be O-line.
It's gotta be
Think so?
gotta be Tevin Jenkins.
They traded Trent Brown to the Patriots.
It's Tevin
They
Jenkins.
traded Rodney Hudson to the Cardinals. They traded Garrett Jackson to the Seahawks.
Right.
Their whole right side of the offensive line is gone.
Do you
Completely
think,
gone.
Wow. Well, it's an offensive lineman. Everybody just heard it in the air.
Yep.
But it's Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle
Wait,
from Alabama.
Jordan's saying I told you so.
Telling
Jordan?
No,
Jordan?
He's a senior.
Oh,
He's from a big program,
big program. I told you guys.
and he plays a premium position. We've seen Mike Mayock in years past. He values seniors. He values players from big programs. Alex Leatherwood fits all of those. Now, this is a reach for Alex Leatherwood. But I've been saying all along, Mike Mayock always selects seniors from big programs with first-round picks.
has
We
not
saw it
worked
with
out
Damon
well for them
Arnett
for the last
last
2
year.
years.
We've seen it in years past. Jonathan Abram is another example of it as well.
How have those
Alex
worked out?
Leatherwood is the next
Bad.
guy.
This is insane.
That's the process.
Again!
That's the process that they have, and this is why when Tevin Jenkins, I had yesterday at 5 p.m. Tevin Jenkins was my mock pick to the Raiders, and I'm like, he doesn't play at a big enough program for the Las
Yeah, he
Vegas
said
Raiders.
that, yeah.
He does not play at a big enough program, and sure enough, we would rather take Alex Leatherwood because he's played at right guard and he's also played at left
Oh,
tackle
my
because he
goodness.
played at Alabama and he's a senior like Jordan mentioned. Say what you will, that's their process. So ignore the general consensus and ignore conventional wisdom when it comes to the Raiders. They have their criteria and they don't care.
This is the Raiders
Hey,
every
listen,
year now. This is the Raiders every year.
More like the Las Vegas Reachers, because we're talking
wow.
Cleveland Farrell, we're talking Jonathan Abram.
Joe just became a dad this past year, if you couldn't
Show
tell.
me the lie. There've been reach after reach after reach under John Gruden.
No,
And this
that's
is just the
no,
next
it's,
one.
It's
That's
absolutely
absolutely true. Though. That's absolutely true.
And we went into
So
the
they're
draft.
doing this. So I'm curious if they're doing this to play him at right guard then.
Right. Is he playing Gabe Jackson's spot?
Right.
Now
Or
that's
is he going to
bad.
play right tackle?
Now that's bad.
So
We're
to
talking
add-
about guards.
He can play guard and tackle.
Right.
And he's played at right guard and left tackle. So there's nothing stopping him from playing right guard and taking Trent Brown's spot. It's just a question of which one they're going to ask him to do.
So for context, Denzel Good, who's currently slated at right guard, he's a better tackle than he is an inside player. So if Alex Leatherwood is going to be the right guard, it does make sense from the standpoint you can kick
Miami Dolphins.
Denzel Good out to the outside at right tackle, insert Alex Leatherwood at right guard, and yeah, you solve two positions. However, when Tevin Jenkins and Christian Darius are staring you in the face, and you take Alex Leatherwood,
That's the part. That's just the part that I can't get behind here. You are totally right. And I went into the week,
And it is what it
thinking
is.
That's what they do. Seniors, big programs, captains, lead. Like that means clearly so much to what the Raiders do. But I just thought that this year, after 2 drafts where you go, man, we swung at some of these guys and we pretty much missed to this point. I don't want to call it big misses entirely, but like they have not been what they.
Next pick at 18. The Dolphins traded Eric Flowers earlier this week.
Sure.
Solomon Kinley played right guard for them unless Eric Flowers was injured, in which case he moved over to the left side and played left guard. Their right tackle at the end of the season was number 39 overall pick in the 2020 draft, Robert Hunt, who many analysts, including I assume everybody on this panel, perceived to be a better guard than he was a tackle. The Dolphins, as of reports, are interested in moving Hunt inside to play right guard. Solomon Kinley can go over and play left guard. So they do have a potential vacancy at right tackle. I'll be interested to see Kwity Paye still on the board. This has been a rumored spot for a pressure player. We've seen Zaven Collins and Micah Parsons come off the board, who would be the other stylistic fits. This pick is in. We don't know who it is just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kwity Paye, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tevin Jenkins.
Dude, if it's Jenkins and Miami comes away with Jalen Waddle and Tevin Jenkins,
Build a supporting cast around a young quarterback. That's exactly
Yes.
what we talked about with the
Great.
Jets. That's what the Dolphins would do with this pick.
Man.
so even if it's not Jenkins, I mean, Paye as an edge rusher, a tailor-made guy for Brian Flores can easily step into that Shaq Lawson role and give them definitely a more dynamic pass rusher and equally as good of a run defender. So if they get Paye or Jenkins here, I think that's a big win for Miami.
You think they got Paye over Jalen Phillips?
That's what I was wondering.
You think he got Paye over Jalen Phillips?
We did not, because Jalen Phillips is the pick at number 18. University of Miami Hurricanes. Let's go.
That's man. Hey, Tamario.
Tell us how you really feel, Kyle.
No, I really feel this kind of way because I host the Locked On Dolphins podcast, and I did a podcast completely dedicated to the top edge rushers. I created a big board of the best edge rushers that would fit stylistically for what the Dolphins want and need, and Jalen Phillips was my number 1 edge defender on that board. It was just a question of the concussions that forced a medical retirement and his departure from UCLA and what teams felt comfort-wise regarding that. From a stylistic perspective, I have said Jalen Phillips has the best defensive tape of any prospect in the 2021 draft. I've said it on WQAM. I said it on Onside Radio in Miami. I've said it on Locked On Dolphins, and I'm saying it here.
And Draft Dudes, it could bring
and the Draft Dudes podcast. So I'm absolutely thrilled by this selection just from a value perspective.
So Kyle, real quick, I think we all recognize the talent of Phillips. I think he's everyone's top edge rusher based on talent. I'm curious, as the resident Miami guy, the Dolphin guy, where does he fit in a 3-4 scheme? Because to me, I always felt he's best as a 4-3 defensive end. Do you think he can play stand-up outside back or a 5-tech?
So I'm not necessarily interested in playing him inside in the B gap too often, but I do think Miami played a lot of hybrid front. They did play a lot of 2-point releases from their outside rushers, Shaq Lawson, and that's the big thing. Is Kyle Van Noy left? He was a linebacker playing a 2-point stance. He played 70% of his snaps on the line of scrimmage, despite the fact that he was a 240-pound outside linebacker. And then they also lost Shaq Lawson, who they traded in a trade with the Houston Texans to get Benardrick McKinney to play inside linebacker. And he was somebody who played the vast majority of his snaps with his hand in the dirt. So because of the departures and trades and Dolphins showing complete lack of emotion in their ability to make personnel decisions regardless on how much money they signed guys to play with last year, there was vacancies as a guy to play with his hand in the dirt, as an outside rusher, and there were guys, there was a vacancy for guys who could play as a hybrid front guy to play off the ball. So that was the appeal with Micah Parsons and also Zaven Collins. But for me, the biggest thing is you're in a division with the Buffalo Bills and elite quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen twice, Russell Wilson. Those were 4 of the 6 losses that the Dolphins had last year were those elite quarterbacks. And they gave them fits because the Dolphins had to bring extra bodies to try and get pressure, and they got torn to shreds in coverage because there were gaping holes because they couldn't get there in time. The Dolphins had the 3rd slowest time from snap to 5 yards of depth from their pass rushers in the entire NFL last year, according to Next Gen Stats. They had nobody that could win in a 1-on-1 situation as a pass rusher. Jalen Phillips is the best pass rusher in this year's class, period.
He feels very convicted about it.
Yeah.
He should. I mean, Chris Greer hits a home run. You get Jalen Waddle, you get Jalen Phillips, crazy good athletes, premium positions, crazy good tape. I mean, this is a big win for Miami, 100%. A team that really needed to find or continue to find foundational players for this roster. A 10-win team last year, despite having very inconsistent quarterback play, having no weapons, having 3 rookie starters on the offensive line, nothing at running back. I'm excited to see what Brian Flores can do with this infusion of talent because I think Brian Flores has overachieved for both of his 2 seasons in Miami, given the talent level.
It's a sign of good coaching.
He's got a couple of really dynamic young pieces to add to the roster. There's no way about it. This is a slam dunk 2 picks for the Miami Dolphins.
And just when you think about the upside of both a Waddle and a Phillips, if both these 2 players hit,
unreal.
We're talking perennial Pro Bowl players. Like there's absolutely.
Yeah.
The floor is the ceiling, or the ceiling is the roof, whatever Jordan says. Like with these 2 players, it is absolutely home runs. Kyle, I'm jealous, man.
So you said home runs, slam dunks for the
Slam
Dolphins. What would be a slam dunk for the Washington football team whose pick is in? We don't know what it is, but what would a slam dunk be for them?
I've said Jamin Davis all along for me. I mean, you come into the season with John Bostic as your starter in the middle. I just think they can get a more athletic option. And whenever you have a strength, I'm all about building strength on a strength. And we know that the Washington football team, they have a fantastic defense. And I know they have needs. An offensive tackle, quarterback could be something that is arguable that they need as well with Ryan Fitzpatrick. We know he's going to give you 1 good year. But after that, we don't really know what he's going to be. So I think Jamin Davis will be a home run pick here for
What do we think about
Washington.
Owusu Koromoa? I mean, you talked about Landon Collins maybe being a little bit of that hybrid safety linebacker-ish player. Okay, well, hey, you just pulled it. You just talked about it.
Go ahead. Take the mic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jamin Davis is the pick.
Talk about it.
So this was one of the worst kept secrets of the draft just because Ron Rivera values military kids. Jamin Davis is a kid that was a military guy, even though he had 1 year of production at Kentucky. If you're 6'3", 240 pounds, and run a high 4.3, you're going to go high in the draft. You're not going to last very long with that. And this is a high upside player, and they always value speed on that side of the football. And I think this is, like I said, I think this is one of the worst kept secrets of the draft. So I think this is a great pick for Washington.
Darius is on the board. You know, this is a team that we often gave an offensive tackle, and Jordan mentioned this before the draft began, that Darius might have a little bit more of a slide than we thought, and of course, I think there was a chance, Brentley, that he could have been the pick at 13 had Rashawn Slater not been there, but man, we know that they like Jamin Davis, right? I mean, like, that's the pick. We were able to predict it, but do we think it should have been Christian Darius?
No, I think Jamin Davis was a home run. I had this in my mock as well as the same with Jordan. And to me, when you think about what Ron Rivera's had in Carolina, Luke Kuechly. When he first started, it was John Beeson.
I mean, they've had
Thomas Davis, Shaq Thompson, Ron Rivera. He's a linebacker himself, for God's sake, right? He values having a guy that he can feel comfortable leading his defense in the middle. You already have Chase Young. You have an outstanding front four: Montez Sweat, Darren Payne, Jonathan Allen. Now you get an athletic freak like Jamin Davis, who's 6'4", 240, can run a 4.4 40, can cover Kyle Pitts in the slot, and is a heat-seeking missile play in the run. I mean, I think if I was a betting man, which I am, I'd put.
Sources can confirm. Bradley told me he's got a lot of money riding on tonight.
Jamin Davis, the early favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
I love that you went there, man.
So, if you guys remember, we were talking in our scouting meetings before the draft and looking at what could be in play for Washington, and they did so much in free agency to help the offense that I kind of said, hey guys, what if Micah Parsons gets there? Like, would this be something you would entertain? And I think everyone said, oh, no. And then we talked more about it. We warmed up to the idea of them going and getting that true linebacker where John Bostic, I mean, this guy's had one heck of a career, but he's getting older. Now you get a chance to really potentially upgrade from that guy and really solidify your front seven. I think so many times we talk about fixing weaknesses, and you have to, but it's also important to invest in strengths. And so another first-round pick for this Washington football team front seven, they're building an identity, and it's tried and true. Getting after the quarterback, being stout in your front seven, that wins football games, and now they just need to take that next step offensively. I think they should with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with Curtis Samuel now in the mix. Maybe Kelvin Harmon comes back and gives them something. I mean, their offensive line was pretty good last year, all things considered. I think Washington is definitely building on what they had last year, and I don't think that they're going away in the NFC East.
New York Giants now on the clock. They moved back from number 11 all the way to number 20. Kyle, thank you for raising your hand.
Yeah, I want to be respectful. You gave Dre credit for that, so I just want to be transparent. So you can catch these hands over here.
We have nothing to fight about.
I just wanted to give everybody an update on some of TDN's consensus rankings from the scouting staff, their best available players. Caleb Farley, the corner from Virginia Tech, who of course has some injury issues and questions with the back, and back injuries are scary, so it's understandable why he's still here.
Right.
But we as a staff couldn't speak intelligently on that, so we acknowledged that exists, but we didn't change our rankings because that existed. Christian Darius, who had groin surgery this offseason, played through an injury this season, is our next best available player. Kwity Paye, the defensive end from Michigan, is our third best available player. Jordan Reed has been saying, I'm telling you, Kwity Paye at 11, Kwity Paye at 11. Well, they traded back, and he's still here now, so this is probably a dream come true for them.
Do you think they're going to address those holes on defense first, or do you address their shaky offensive line?
Well, I mean, they could go a lot of different directions here. And like Joe mentioned earlier, we know that Dave Gettleman loves his hog mollies. But if they want to go Christian Darius out here, they can. The options are kind of getting slim a little bit with them. You could take a Tevin Jenkins possibly, but I think Kwity Paye would be a really good fit for New York right here.
How about that for Dave Gettleman? The guy finally moves back, picks up an extra first-round pick next year, and gets a player that we wouldn't have blinked an eye at 20 that could have been in play at 11 or wherever we're at now. I think it is 20. Yeah, yes. 20. So, for as much criticism as we extend to David Gettleman, I think if this is what works out, he deserves a lot of praise.
No, you're right. I think we as a scouting staff do, we poke fun at GMs and head coaches sometimes when we think they make some boneheaded moves, but we'll acknowledge them when they make the right moves. And I think that you're right. Dave Gettleman, for his first experience trading down, I think it looks like it could be a great one. They've still got to hit this pick, but I feel like it could be a good one.
Trevor?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the saying, variety is the spice of life?
I am now.
Dave
Yeah.
Gettleman, try something new. It might work out well for you.
Yes,
So
yes.
here you are. You
Yes.
pick up an extra
Look,
first round
if this
pick.
works for him, he's just day 2. He's going to be like, all right, we're moving back now.
This
I'm
is
broken
the
right
same
here.
guy that Jordan has been pounding the table for since last night when he flew in Kwity Paye as a fit for the Giants.
At
He's
11.
here at 20. You picked up an extra first round pick in the process
That's a
for a quarterback
home
trade.
run.
So that's not to say that's the pick. We don't know what the pick
Right,
is.
right,
but
right.
generally speaking, this is the first time ever Dave Gettleman in 9 drafts has traded down. Dave,
Yeah.
welcome to the party, brother. This is what it's like.
I think we can all sit here and make the educated guess. It's got to be Kwity Paye. Could it potentially be a receiver?
Which
Elijah-
one?
Elijah-
Elijah Moore.
Oh, I wouldn't hate
Could
that at all.
it potentially be Elijah Moore?
Yeah.
Look what they have at receiver. They have nobody that has the speed. Yes, if you want to count John Ross, I certainly am not. Elijah Moore will give them a different dynamic to an offense that is certainly lacking big play potential. The whole narrative in the offseason is surround Daniel Jones with as much talent as possible. Elijah Moore could be that guy playing in the slot with.
Oh my goodness.
I had the wrong receiver,
hit
but,
receiver.
You were spot on.
but I was spot on.
Oh, you were doing so good, Gilman.
Wow.
Kadarius.
This is why you don't trade down.
That's
Actually, like that.
So, as I was saying, I had
mean,
the
I
wrong
get it,
receiver. It's
but-
not
Oh,
Elijah
my
Moore. It's
Lord.
Kadarius Toney.
Okay.
But the thought process is still the same. You want to surround
Toney.
Daniel Jones with
like
as
him.
much talent
I
as
like him
possible.
too, but here,
Right? This is an evaluation.
in this
year.
situation-
as much as Dave
But
Gettleman
if
won't
you
want to
think
admit it,
think Jackson
he has to be able to
25.
see today, is Daniel Jones the guy? You already gave him Kenny Galladay. He's not the necessarily a
get
big
on board.
separator. Neither is Darius Slayton. Kadarius Toney is arguably the third, second best separator, only behind Devontae Smith, potentially, and Jalen Waddle in this entire draft.
this. I mean, this does not seem like a Gettleman player at all, does it? I mean, that's the most shocking. It's not even what Brentley just outlined that they could go receiver, because he's right. If you want to target a receiver need, like, okay, I think receiver was in play at 12. I never would have thought about Kadarius Toney for the Giants.
I think if I wanted to find something I like about this selection for the New York Giants is that it gives them a really good yards after catch guy. And I think that option for Daniel Jones to, get the football to on drag routes, get him to on bubble screens, ask him to uncover quickly in the slot and see if he can, catch it in stride and make a linebacker miss and see what he can do creatively with the football in his hands. And, Brentley mentioned their lack of speed. I don't know if I would fully agree with that with Darius Slayton and Kenny Galladay, guys that win down the field. I think their spacing offensively can really lend itself favorably to having Kadarius Toney as a weapon for Daniel Jones. So you have a guy who was stagnant year 1 to year 2 in Daniel Jones. Kadarius Toney is the type of guy that I think can simplify things for him
Right.
and give him a trusted check down offense. I know option. I know it's a little bit boring, but I think thinking about Daniel Jones and through that lens, that's how I could buy into it.
Haven't had a playmaker pick in a while, so we haven't heard from the fantasy guys in too long. I know they're itching to talk about this selection. Josh, take it away, man.
To receive, I know we're giving Dave Gettleman credit now for trading back, but I feel like all that credit is a little sucked out of him right now with this selection. It's a weird one in that I don't really think Kadarius Toney played wide receiver in college in many ways. He wasn't asked to run your traditional routes. His average depth of target was 7.7 yards. That was 320th across all of the college football landscape last season. It's an odd Dave Gettleman fit who seems like a very traditional guy along with the coaching staff. How do you think it's going to play out?
I think you look at Daniel Jones. This may be a make it or break a year for him.
Yeah.
They had Kenny Galladay in free agency, who's obviously going to garner targets as their wide receiver 1. I think people have forgotten they have Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard. But you look at them and you compare them to Kadarius Toney, and especially Sterling Shepard, they do a little bit of the same type of things that Toney did at Florida. Maybe he's a little bit faster, maybe he's a little quicker with the ball. But overall, it really is an interesting selection.
I kind of think back to when Dave had his back against the wall in Carolina, and in the same draft he gets Christian McCaffrey and he gets Curtis Samuel. Obviously, he's not having a Christian McCaffrey-like talent in this draft, but you have Saquon Barkley already in the backfield, and you have someone here that you can manufacture touches for. And it's kind of become a theme across the league to find that player who wins after the catch, who wins with the ball in their hands. And all these teams that don't have it, they crave it, but it always comes back to the usage. If they can give them the ball correctly, if they can design everything correctly. I might struggle with that a little bit with what we know about Jason Garrett and how he has used players in the past, but who knows? Any other thoughts on Kadarius?
Darius Toney is the ultimate chess piece. I think, on my board I had Rondell Moore out of Purdue is higher than Toney. But you look at NFL offenses and how they've progressed over the years. Look at Kansas City and how they've used their wideouts, like Curtis Samuel was used in Carolina, and how he'll be used in Washington. Scott Turner's offense, guy that can catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage and create. And I think Kadarius Toney will do that for New York in his first season. It's going to be hard to garner targets. Maybe that's a good problem to have, especially with Saquon Barkley, going to get his touches, especially when he's back healthy. Kadarius Toney, it's an interesting selection, especially with a couple wide receivers that could be higher on their board. But Daniel Jones, make it or break it year for him.
Tony's actually neck and neck with Darius Slayton in terms of underdog ADP at 179. So one of those two players is going to win out the season. Now we're going to send it over to Benjamin Solak.
Kadarius Toney, the fourth wide receiver off of the board. It's stunning. We thought it could be Elijah Moore. We thought it could be Rashad Bateman. Instead, it ends up the Florida joystick, the high school quarterback turned receiver turned big play shenanigans all over the place. That is two Florida weapons that are there now in the top 20 with Kyle Pitts, his tight end teammate, going at 4. Could we see another Florida Gator on offense? I'm thinking quarterback Kyle Trask, potentially as that third Florida Gator on offense inside the first round. It could happen, but Trask benefited a ton from this guy right here. Toney is the best receiver in the class with the ball in hand creation. And so in that Daniel Jones offense, Jason Garrett is the coordinator. We're shallow targets all over the field, quick game. That's where Daniel Jones is the most effective. This player, Kadarius Toney, is going to be able to take 5-yard depth of targets and turn them into 20-yard explosive gains. And that's what we talk about in this spread the wealth offense. Kenny Golladay on one side, Darius Slayton on the other side, Sterling Shepard in one slot, and Kadarius Toney in the other. Oh boy, that's some home cooking. All right, the Indianapolis Colts, 21 on the board. Another potential wide receiver spot with the Tennessee Titans at 22 on deck. Another potential wide receiver spot. Scouting team, who's going to be the next wideout off the board?
When you take a look at this next pick with the Colts, they're coming off an 11-win season. Obviously, they acquired Carson Wentz, and then they're having their first round pick since 2018. I mean, what's their move here?
Well, I do think it's interesting. The Colts have a couple of positions of need that could be of interest. You have Kwity Paye at the defensive end position. You have a couple of offensive tackles, including Tevin Jenkins, but their primary need is at left tackle with Anthony Costanzo and that vacancy there at left tackle. So I think those are probably the two primary spots that you look at, and that makes sense for the way Chris Ballard has handled his business with the Indianapolis Colts. Is if you're going to stay put and make a pick, then you're making picks that are at premium positions in the trenches. And I think Indianapolis has a couple of excellent options between Tevin Jenkins and Kwity Paye here that would be home run decisions either way.
Yeah, they can't roll with Sam Tevi at left tackle, right, Brentley? That can't be the answer. So to me, there's an option there, and edge certainly seems to be another standout to me.
Dre?
Well, edge may be a position they're considering. I think with the retirement of Costanzo, that this pick could be left tackle Liam Eichenberg for me, and I've mocked him here a few times.
I would love for it to be Eichenberg. I don't know if they're going to do it because every time I talk up Eichenberg, it seems like people are like, nah, he's not going to go in the first round. But I'm with you, Dre. I'd absolutely love it. You talk about Eichenberg. All right, so he's not as athletic as some of these other guys. Well, I've said this before. If you're not as athletic as an offensive tackle, where are you weak? Where can they attack you? Outside shoulder, right? Speed guys, they can go around you. So that means that you might have to overcompensate, get more aggressive in your pass sets to try to protect your outside shoulder. When that happens, you open up the inside move. So then you're more vulnerable with them going inside. But when you've got a guy like Quentin Nelson next to you, all of a sudden, that helps him out a little bit more. So the one weakness that you really find in Eichenberg's game, I feel, can be alleviated sitting next to a play like Quentin Nelson. That's why I would love the pick.
I personally, I would.
Not to mention though the escapability of Woods too. I mean, I think that kind of helps the pass rush as well.
Could go as well, Brentley.
I was gonna say, I love the fit of Eichenberg. I'd love him a little later in the draft. And so if there was a potential way to move back, again, we are in Caleb Farley territory here, in my opinion. Could a team like the New Orleans Saints want to move up? That would make a lot of sense here.
Maybe.
Imagine Quentin Nelson and Tevin Jenkins
That's
on
the
the
other
same
one that I
side
keep
of
thinking
the
about.
line with Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
Running behind them. There's going to be some space, and he's a freight train once he
Run,
gets
toss,
going.
sweeps.
That's
Well,
fine.
I do think we need to interject here because the Colts, their vacancies at left tackle, right? Tevin Jenkins has predominant.
The pick is in. It's Woody Pay for the Colts. We've got Mike Slayton in here.
Something tells me Josh Norris had that in his mock draft.
There it is.
Josh might have one of the most accurate mock drafts in the
Josh,
Go
world.
ahead, Josh, come here. Take that mic off. Get over here.
We are 21 picks in, and Josh legit might have
Batting
one of
1,000.
the most
All time.
accurate mock drafts of all time. We're gonna get him over here, but real quick.
He's not touching the ground the entire way over here.
He's just levitating.
Oh my gosh.
How does it feel? Are you sweating at this point?
Look, okay.
Are you even rooting for
First
the
of
right
all,
picks or just your picks?
Do you know who did this? Benjamin Solak with that picture he took of me yesterday with the double chin. I've been working out for 3 months. I've been working out for 3 months, and he caught me in a moment of agony, in a moment of distress. And look what it's turned into.
Yes.
Not counting our chickens before they hatch.
This is the
But
universe.
it was also
giving you something
all of you. It was all of you. I picked your brains.
Yeah, you listened to me talk and took absolutely none of my advice, and it was the best decision you could have made.
All right, back to Quiddy Pay. Sorry.
All right, so let's actually talk about the fit here. Quiddy Pay going to the Indianapolis Colts. Oh, do you see this Colts war room? It's every single wall has a player name on it. That's extensive.
To
I've never
me,
seen
just
anything
from
like
a
that.
player, scheme, team, culture fit, what an outstanding just synergy, right? I mean, think about what Chris Ballard wants in a football player. Tough, hard-nosed,
Great backstory,
hard
too,
hat,
you
lunch
know?
pill kind of guy. That is Quiddy Pay. Outstanding against the run, really good explosiveness, really strong against the point of attack. I mean, to have him rushing next to DeForest Buckner,
Yeah. Wow.
how do you defend that?
Well, it's a pick that totally makes sense. Now, Quiddy, in a lot of mocks that I did and a lot of mocks that I've seen, was off the board at this point. 14 with Minnesota, 11 with the Giants, 18 with the Dolphins seemed to be a very popular, almost floor for Quiddy Pay. But if he was getting past this was another very logical spot. So, Joe, when you look at this, I mean, what's the next edge rusher that we're going to take here?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Jason Owe from Penn State. The first thing people say with Jason Owe is no sacks last year, but the disruption he created, the growth that he showed as a run defender, the traits, the athleticism, it's just too much to ignore. And so when you're thinking about some of the teams coming up, whether they're the Cleveland Browns, or if he takes a dip, I'm sure Buffalo would love to retool their edge room with a guy like Jason Owe. I think he's that next logical guy to come off the board. We heard some rumblings that Peyton Turner could join the party tonight.
Yeah.
So it's time, right? The little run on edge rushers is happening, and I don't think it's going to be too much longer before we hear Owe come off the board.
What are the odds that Basham Jr. slides into there?
No, we have to acknowledge it. I know Kyle perked up a little bit there because he knows that I'd be critical of that selection, but there's been some hype and some buzz for that, and so if a team towards the back of the first round misses out on one of these guys and they feel like they have to get an edge, maybe they pull the trigger on Basham. That would surprise me. He's an older prospect, more of a run defender, a guy that I don't know has I know he tested well, but you watch him on tape, you don't really see a guy that really is a true threat to the outside hip of the offensive tackle. So we'll talk about Basham when we need to, but Kyle has his hand up, and I guess I should.
We did pound the table for him.
We did. I'm a big fan of raising my hand and getting attention my way. So this is good,
The floor is yours.
positive reinforcement.
Of course, yeah.
The Titans are on the clock at 22.
Yeah.
Right. Elijah Moore. Anybody else here?
I mean, yeah,
Elijah Moore.
This is the one that I think
Josh
everyone has.
Norris
Josh
would
has
lose
as well,
his
so
mind,
we
and
will-
I need to see it because we're probably going to hammer a couple shots after this draft is over if that's the case.
Could also be Tevin Jenkins too, though.
It could
right?
be.
They
Their right tackle. They have a need at right
Tevin
tackle.
Jenkins. Yeah, there's
So-
a good chance.
So they took the shot at 29 last year on Isaiah Wilson from Georgia.
Yes.
And Isaiah Wilson has not only been traded to the Dolphins since then in a pick swap of 7th-round picks,
I mean, bad.
but he
Just
was cut from the Dolphins 3 days after the trade was formalized to send him, Isaiah Wilson, to Miami. He's since released a rap album, and the messaging appears to be, I understand, I'm not coming back to football anytime soon. So that pick was a needs-based pick for Tennessee. They came up empty-handed, and I guarantee you won't have to deal with any of that with Tevin Jenkins.
It's so crazy to me that a organization that's got John Robinson at the top as general manager and Mike Vrabel as head coach picked Isaiah Wilson and missed this part of it, because it just seems like Mike Vrabel's only even considering full-on football guys, and it's crazy to me that they were fooled in this.
But I would want Joe, I would want you to extrapolate. You listened to a podcast recently this offseason that talked about John Robinson talking about drafting for need.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested in you bringing some of those comments from John, what podcast you heard it on, kind of extrapolating on why the Isaiah Wilson pick happened, and why the next corresponding pick could potentially be Tevin Jenkins as a natural right tackle slotting into that spot.
Yeah, it's the best player available podcast hosted by Neil Stratton. He's done a great series on the 2017 NFL Draft, and through that he had a former member of John Robinson's staff on the podcast to discuss their thought process in that draft. And if you recall, they had 2 picks. One of them was in the top 5, Corey Davis. The other was the Adoree Jackson pick. And what he said, the first thing John Robinson does is he says, all right, do we have both of our offensive tackles? Do we have our quarterback? Do we have our edge? And do we have our cornerbacks? Premium positions, he's dialed into that. And they said, well, we didn't really think Corey Davis had the ceiling of a number 1 receiver. We thought he could be a really good number 2, but because they felt good at offensive tackle with Conklin and Luan, and they felt good about the depth of the cornerback spot in that draft. Remember, this was Marshawn Lattimore, Adoree Jackson, Garyon Conley, Tre'Davious White, Marlon Humphrey. I mean, unbelievable cornerback year. They said, we think we can get our corner later. We'll take the guy that we think could be our number 2 receiver now. So he said, look, they are a premium position first, needs-based team. Well, the thing about Tennessee is they have needs at all of those spots now, right? So they have need at offensive tackle, they have need at corner, they have a need at wide receiver, and heck, I mean, with Harold Landry an expiring contract, you could say they have a need at edge as they welcome in Bud Dupree as a guy coming off an injury. So I think everything is in play for the Titans.
Well, the pick is in now, and now he just said everything is in. Caleb Farley is the pick.
Wow.
You mentioned they have lots of
Caleb
needs at
Farley
quarterback.
gets in
Finally
there.
off the board.
Oh my goodness.
To me,
I'm so happy about this.
This just makes so much sense, right? I mean,
surprised.
you think about Tennessee, they drafted Jeffrey Simmons, I think it was 2 years ago, and he was coming off a torn ACL. This team is not afraid to draft players. There's a little bit of injury concern if they're high upside impact players. That's exactly what Caleb Farley is. If there was no injury concerns with this player, he's arguably the best corner of the draft, and he's long gone, potentially as early as the
I'll
Carolina.
tell you. Yeah,
Right?
I'll
they
tell
got,
you.
They got a major steal here. If he's healthy, major steal.
If Caleb Farley doesn't have those injuries, Eagles don't trade up in this draft. Eagles stay at 12, and Eagles draft one of the 3 corners. Even if it went exactly like this, I think that it would have gotten to them, and they would have been drafting a cornerback at number 12, however you would have wanted to slice it up. Maybe Carolina picks Caleb Farley because I know they liked Caleb Farley. They just clearly wanted to go with a cornerback where they didn't have to worry about the injury history. And so maybe Denver then picks Patrick Surtain. Maybe J.C. Horn does go to the Eagles, right? So, Jordan, I see you raise that hand.
Raise that hand.
All right.
I'm surprised by this. And just because of the Isaiah Wilson thing that happened last year, I thought that maybe they wanted to go with a more safer option.
Yeah.
And I thought, of course, there's a lot of risk associated with this pick, but I thought they would want to go with a little bit more sure thing. And we don't know what any of these guys or how they pan out, but with the risk that's associated with Farley and then what happened last year with Isaiah Wilson and him not panning out already, it's kind of like in back-to-back years, you're risking people not turning out. So this pick is a little bit surprising.
And even the year before that was Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Dre.
Just to add, though, I think that knowing the things that I know about John Robinson and so forth, a pick not panning out in years past due to character concerns, and a pick not panning out due to injury. I think that's a little bit different. But Farley, I obviously liked a tremendous amount. I had him as my cornerback one. And barring the injury, I think that he would have went much earlier than he has. But this is somebody who can step in. Although he may only be a one contract player, he's going to give you a tremendous amount of value if he's healthy while he's there. So, great player.
Yeah.
You were able to grab as he slid.
Getting potential CB1 in the 20s, I think, is a great move, of course, if it pans out for them. Did anybody end up having Farley in the first round of their mock because of everything that we heard?
I had him a little later. I had him to Baltimore,
Not the
but I mean,
Bills.
like I said, I think you're in.
I get it.
You're
You
in
guys have it.
Caleb Farley range, right? This is what I've been saying. I think in the mid to late 20s, this is where his talent begins to outweigh some of the injury concerns, because the word on the street is he's playing in 2021. It's not like he's currently, gonna miss this season. The concern is this injury gonna flare up again?
Right.
That's
if he
the
takes
concern.
some NFL hits,
that's
is
the
the back going to
concern
start
here.
to fail
And so,
again?
right now, as we sit here today, the Titans can insert Caleb Farley to be either CB1,
Yeah.
and that, from looking at the depth chart right now, is a massive, massive improvement.
Joe, where'd you have him go?
Yeah, I had him going to the Saints towards the end of the first round. Obviously, difficult player to project with the injury stuff, but Kyle has really done a good job of reminding us of how much Tennessee has lost. I mean, this team was in the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. That's not that long ago, but since then they've had a ton of players leave the team, and they need to recoup some of that. And so I don't hate a swing like this, because if they get everything out of Caleb Farley, he can be one of the better corners in the league. There's nothing physically that he's lacking. And so for a team that needs to get back into prominence, or else I fear they could be one of those teams that doesn't get back to the postseason, I think this was a worthwhile swing for a team that needs to get back on track.
Now we got the Minnesota Vikings up at number 23.
Let's go to this man right here.
All right, let's do it.
What does the board look like for you? Minnesota obviously got a big win in being able to trade back, which is something they've done a ton of in the past. They were able to do so again this year. And what are your expectations based on the way the board looks, the way the board fell for Minnesota here?
Well, I think it's fell really nicely for them, and I've been saying it all along. I was doubting that they would pick at 14 just because of the success that Rick Spielman has had on day 2. They wanted to figure out to recruit or get back one of those picks after losing it in the Yannick Ngakoue trade. So Christian Darius, I think he makes a lot of sense here at 23, or Tevin Jenkins. I think it's probably going to be an offensive lineman just because they haven't taken an edge rusher in the top 2 rounds since 2005. So if they take, a Jason Oweh or somebody like that here, it would definitely go against their tendencies. Azeez Ojulari is still on the board as well. But I think it has to be one of Tevin Jenkins and Christian Darius here.
Jordan, would a Christian Barmore be shocking to you?
It would be, just based off what they did this offseason, signing Dalvin Tomlinson and then getting Michael Pierce back this year after he opted out. So they don't really have a need at 3 technique as far as being urgent right now. So Barmore would surprise me a little bit over an offensive lineman.
I feel like Derek saw it just also lines up with what you were saying, where, all right, maybe not top 15 pick, first round pick still, but this is more his comfort zone of what you were projecting, of what people were saying about Darius,
Right.
correct?
Absolutely. And it's always funny to see what's the big difference between the draft media and then what the league thinks as well. And Darius seemed to be that guy. And like I was sharing with you guys yesterday, top 20, or I should say early 20s, was where the league really saw him at, just because the play temperament, the on and off switch, there was some concerns about that.
Vikings can be okay with that, though?
Yeah, I think so. And they have a huge hole at left tackle right now.
Right.
They really have done a good job of remaining coy about it. They're probably going to keep Brian O'Neill at right tackle and probably Ezra Cleveland at right guard. So they have a huge hole at left tackle. All they have is Rashad Hill there right now. We know he's more of a 6-man off the bench type swing offensive tackle.
What do you guys think? Needs for the Vikings here at 23. Jordan's outlined a couple on the trenches. I mean, is that where they're going to go one way or the other, you believe?
Yeah, I do think this is probably the sweet spot for a Darisaw. I do think the narrative kind of leading up to him in the draft was a little rich, which we've clearly seen play out. I would For some reason in my gut, I do think Barmore could be in play. I think Barmore is going to surprise somewhere around this range. However, I'd be on the lookout for Greg Newsom. You know, the concerns with Jeff Gladney are well documented. We know this team is invested a lot of capital in the corner position. That's clearly a priority for Rick Spielman. This is about the sweet spot for Greg Newsom as well, and so I'd say, Darius all, but I would not be shocked for Newsom.
Well, what's the catalyst for the Minnesota Vikings? Dalvin Cook. Let's get him some blocking. Let's make sure that this left side of the offensive line is solidified. I think Christian Darius should be the guy that they get in. I think he's a good fit for their zone run scheme. You saw him work laterally. He's powerful, which is kind of unique for a zone guy, that I think he can get after guys. He's pretty explosive into contact. And I love how he connects with moving targets down the field and trails plays. And I think that as he...
You were right. Pick is Christian Darius.
Jordan, you recruited Christian Darius out of high school. Let's hear it.
Yeah, funny story that I always like to tell. And went up there. He's from Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and he went to the same high school as Zion Johnson, who's the left tackle at Boston College right now. I walk in, see a 6'5", 270-pound kid, soft body, has no idea how good he can be. I go in there and shake his hand. I said, Coach, I can offer him right now. I don't even need to see him. I'm good. So I walk out of there, think I get a steal. The next month, Virginia Tech finds him. And it was over after that. So I lose him. He goes to military school, and it was all she wrote after that. So, yeah, I think it's a big-time player. It's just a matter of him consistently having that on-off switch and having it turned on. So the Vikings had a huge question mark at that left tackle spot, but now you have a long-term answer potentially in Darius. So I like this fit a lot.
I feel like there's a lot to talk about with this next selection. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because this is a threat for the first running back to come off the board. There's been whispers of them having their choice at this running back class. Obviously losing James Conner. The pick is in for the Steelers immediately, so I guess they really were truly sprinted to the podium with this one. Do you think it's running backs?
Well, I think this is the ultimate test of positional value, right? Is Tevin Jenkins still on the board?
It's a corner.
We've got
Greg Newsom's on the board.
Najee Harris would be a bad pick.
Listen, there has been more smoke to Najee Harris to Pittsburgh than there has been to any player outside the top 10 in this year's draft. And I understand they have a need at tackle. They're presuming to lose Alejandro Villanueva. They have Zach Banner slated to start at right tackle for them. They lost Matt Filer. Marquise Pouncey retired. I get it. They've got needs all up front. But this has been constantly hammered as a spot for Najee Harris. I'm fascinated to see if they're going to go with positional value or if they're going to go with a perceived best player available at a lesser valuable position in the running back position.
The pick is Harris, the running back from Alabama. Joe, I want to start with you because you said if it's Harris, this is a bad pick.
Yeah, they just have too many needs. I mean, this offensive line has been depleted with all the guys that they've lost. And Najee Harris is a good running back. I love how he'll help in the passing game, probably the most, right? You think about Ben Roethlisberger and how quickly he wanted to get the ball out of his hands. I think that would be a great asset for Ben Roethlisberger. But when you have these types of needs on the offensive line and you have a Tevin Jenkins available, I think this is a misuse of this resource.
All right, so another skilled position player, which means we get to hear from the fantasy guys. Josh, is this another pick? Is this another pick?
I'm at 47 now with about 8 picks to go. We're having a night, baby. All right, let's talk about Najee Harris, though, who is the highest ranked player in terms of ADP on Underdog Fantasy right now. He is being drafted right around some mainstays across the NFL between J.K. Dobbins, James Robinson, then there's Najee Harris, Chris Carson, and then Travis Etienne, ADP of 33 overall. What do you see the fit like here with the Pittsburgh Steelers going a little more traditional with Najee Harris?
I think it's a little interesting when you look back to what they had in Le'Veon Bell. I know it's just a couple of years ago, but how he can fit that role. He can run through you. He can run around you. He had 30 total touchdowns this year at Alabama. He has a unique skill set unlike any other running back in this class. I think it's an excellent fit. You look at that offense, they have weapons outside in Chase Claypool, Deontay Washington. Ben Roethlisberger's aging. It's just such an outstanding fit for Najee Harris.
I think Joe was starting to talk about this, how this is a little bit of a change in the trajectory of the Steelers, at least what they showed last year. I mean, they were first in total plays, or excuse me, 7th in total plays last year, first in pass plays, 28th in run plays.
Right.
Whenever I think about running back success, I think about, one, you need to be on a good team, and yeah, the Steelers started 11-0, but I also think about offensive line and run blocking.
Huge question.
Right, because, good running backs pick up the yards created for them. Great backs create yards on their own. And Najee can do that, I think he's solid yet unspectacular, but I think the receiving element that you mentioned is really important because when you go back and watch him against Texas A&M and LSU, you see these great back shoulder catches. And maybe they're hoping to do a little bit more of that. Does this signal a change for you at all? Like we're going back in the history of what the Steelers were.
Not so much.
Okay.
I think when you look at it, I think when you focus him as a runner, I think that's what Pittsburgh is really going to use him as.
Yeah.
Look back at Saquon Barkley when he was taken by the Giants. When he was taken 2nd overall, the issues in the Giants' offensive line was Saquon Barkley going to be able to get his runs like he did at Penn State in New York with a weak offensive line?
Yeah.
Now you look like that in Pittsburgh. Villanueva's gone. Matt Filer's gone.
I mean, that's
Pouncey retired.
massive.
It's huge. But Najee Harris has that skill set, and obviously Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin believe that as well, for him to come in year 1 and produce.
Yeah, I'm looking at their offensive line depth right now. You have Chuck Okorafor, you have Zach Banner, you have obviously David DeCastro, you have a lot of changes at center as well. I don't think his ADP is going to change in terms of underdog best ball right now because, like the desk was already alluding to, we already expected this is the place that Najee Harris would be. I highly doubt I will exit many drafts this summer with Najee Harris because of the area he's going. Either I'll go 2 running backs at the top and wait a long time, or I'll just take 7 wide receivers, 6 wide receivers to start, and then go with some 0 running back candidates. So Najee is this player that a lot of other people in my league are going to get, but that doesn't mean he's not going to get 200, 250 touches. Don't you expect that kind of workload for him?
Agreed. I definitely think he's going to get a lot of touches in his first season. Come in and produce right away. Again, it's a perfect fit for them. I think Najee Harris will do a lot of different things in the backfield. I think he may go unowned in some leagues as far as guys will be, be able to pick up later in rounds. A sneaky pick. This is one of the other worst kept secrets in the draft other than Jamin Davis at 19. But toss to the desk.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ryan saying it right there, I felt like this was one of the least kept secrets, right, of this draft with Najee Harris going 24 and Jamin Davis going 19.
Which is rare that you have 2 picks outside the top 16. So the back half of the draft, it became in the last 4 days Washington's going to take Jamin and Pittsburgh's going to take Najee.
That was the funniest thing to me is that we had so much draft to go to get confirmed, and we went, nah, Jamin Davis.
It's Jamin and then Najee.
That's who they were picking. I mean, that's what I thought was hilarious. So, all right, we got to bring Josh over again. We brought him over a couple of minutes ago, but we've got an update. Because you are, Josh.
I might break the freaking record.
I want to knock on.
I told you, your mock looked good.
This man's having one of the most accurate mock drafts of all time.
It's like Rick Gosselin, guy who works in a Big J journalist for 35 years, and then me, guy who sits on the couch and stresses out. Tries to ask his friend who they're going to put in their mock draft, and maybe does it 1 pick after. And look what happens, guys.
Look, it's just we're pooling all the intel together, and you're prospering for it. We love to see it.
So, Josh, who is joining Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville?
If it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah,
we're losing our minds.
We are going to lose our minds.
I had him.
I'm about to
say Adam. Yeah, Michael Jacksonville.
Come on, Jacksonville.
I'm about to stone cold some sponsorship seltzer if this happens. All right.
So I'm gonna hold you to that.
I was gonna say, what's left in the mock right now? Let's talk about who you realistically think could get you over the top and break this record.
This is what we're looking at. 25 Jaguars, J.O.K.
Okay.
26 Browns, Greg Newsome. Thanks everyone on the desk.
Yep.
27 Ravens, Jason Oweh. That's a nice little trio. If I get 1 or 2 of those, I'm gonna win the whole damn thing.
Yep.
And then if we can get some other cornerbacks with the Packers and the Bills, and when we get there.
Okay.
But in these next 2 or 3 selections, we might solidify this thing up.
Man's got a chance at
Josh has Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Brentley. Who did you have going?
Yeah, I had my number one safety off the board, Trayvon Moore, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Which I like. I like that pick. I really do.
I wouldn't be upset at Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah coming off the board here. I think he's way more talented in this draft position. But I just feel like what Jacksonville's going to want to do defensively. I know they brought over Rayshon Jenkins. He's not necessarily a free safety like a Trayvon Moore. Trayvon Moore, to me, is a top 20 player. This is great value for him.
Sure.
He's an outstanding football player, outstanding range, ball skills, can tackle in space. That's who I would go with personally. However, you're not going to hear a complaint from me at all if it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Here's the thing with the Owusu-Koramoah. This is kind of something that I looked at the roster, I looked at their defense, I looked at how I know that Urban Meyer is going to want to get more dynamic on both sides of the ball, and I said that this just fits. I don't have any intel on this. I didn't have anybody tell me that this could be the selection. I just think that it makes too much sense, and honestly, guys, the one pick that I would have told you that would have been in the way of Owusu-Koramoah maybe going 25 was Kadarius Toney. I didn't think that Toney was going to be off the board. You know, and I thought if they were going to go offense, that was the way they were going to go. So maybe they sit here and go defense. Brentley, you told me last night that Rayshon Jenkins, their new free safety, is coming off one of the best years of his career, free safety. So now we get in a situation where if you get Owusu-Koramoah, it makes sense. You get speed at the second level. You get speed at strong safety to complement what they've got in Jenkins. And so I think that this one makes a lot of sense. Joe, what do you think?
The player that I have mocked to them is Gregory Rousseau, the edge from Miami. And my thought process there is you think about Trent Baalke and his infatuation with guys like Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner. Rousseau has the potential to fill out his frame and give them that type of player. So if I'm rooting for my own mock draft interest, that's the player that I would be going after.
Are you, at this point, are you rooting for your own mock interest? Or
No,
are
history.
you rooting
We're
for Josh?
rooting for Josh.
Are you rooting for
I'm
Josh?
I'm rooting for Josh, and it's been really interesting because Josh is a guy that you kind of look as kind of mellow, gives good. He's a good information guy. You don't necessarily think he's got this kind of juice, but I mean, Josh Norris for a pale guy is looking kind of my guy over here.
He's losing it over there.
I am. I'm hyped up. I'm like Brock Lesnar about to enter the ring over here.
Yes, I love it. Listen, we've got 2 wrestling references from him with Stone Colding, some seltzers.
He's in another
also
planet
now he's
right
talking about grabbing the ropes with Brock Lesnar.
Here comes the pain, baby. Let's go.
There it is.
Here
You
comes the
got
pain.
it.
So you guys said a lot about JOK. When I asked you guys about this earlier, you said with a guy like him, it's tough because he's a hybrid.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out where he's going to go.
Yeah.
Do you still stand with that thought?
Yeah, I think so. It was a matter of you knew Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can play at a very high level, but at the same time, it's really challenging with it's a hybrid player who doesn't fit into a specific scheme type role to anticipate who's going to say we can cater to that skill set specifically. So I think that's the biggest roadblock for projecting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but that's not going to be the selection here at 25.
Josh, we need to tell the people again who your selection was at 25 because we now know who it is.
Right. My selection was JOK, but it is
Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
makes this layer crazy from a fantasy angle because James Robinson had one of the best rookie seasons.
He won me my league.
Listen, okay, go ahead. We need more fantasy guys here. Go ahead.
I understand what you were going to say in that, and what you just said, he might not fit the offense of now Darrell Bevell and Urban Meyer, what they want. Right. But when you say how we found such value in a James Robinson, but now you spend a first-round pick on Travis Etienne, I do love it from the perspective of Trevor Lawrence and his offense. It's juice.
Right.
It's juice.
It's a guy that he's had success with for years, right?
This is
running
the
out of
third
shotgun.
one that we've seen
Thing is,
like this today. We've got Joe Burrow is back with Jamar
Wow,
Chase.
you're right. You are right. Yep.
Now we have Tua and Waddle.
Oh,
and now
wow.
we have
Wow, yes.
Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne.
Also, Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, Kyle,
okay.
he's raising his hand.
I have a question.
Yes,
Uh-oh.
yeah.
You do
The receipts.
every week mocking the mock. Is
do.
that correct? Okay.
Oh, Lord, okay.
March 26th, 2021.
He has the receipt.
Travis Etienne to the Jaguars? ? Tampa Bay Trey isn't so sure. See what other picks he questioned from Grinding the Tapes Mock Draft 6.0, powered by Mighty Swell. My friend, I would like an apology. You slandered me on YouTube. I'm not standing for it. Listen, James Robinson, he's great out of I-back. I understand Jacksonville was losing by 20 points a game. You're running out of the shotgun, so he had good averages on yards per carry out of the shotgun. He was a UDFA for a reason. He's a fine back. But Travis Etienne, reuniting him with Trevor Lawrence, gives you a dynamic that you wanted to replicate. So please, Trevor, I would like my apology.
It wasn't me.
I see your picture right here.
No, it wasn't me. I don't know what to tell you. It's just full check. It wasn't me. That's what I'm going with here. No, listen, Kyle, I hear you. You were correct in the end. He's walking off stage. He's done. He's not even there. But I will say this, in my own defense, one of the first mock drafts that I did during the season, I had Travis Etienne going to the Jaguars with their second first-round pick. Now, this is during the season.
How do you say
and
that?
Because I let Jaguars fans get the best of me, telling me that there was no way that this was going to happen. The last couple of weeks, I have told Ben on Locked On NFL Draft, I think Urban's going to go off the wall with it. I think we're all sitting here thinking about safety, thinking about interior defensive line, and Urban Meyer is going to look at that 25th pick and he's going to say, I want the most dynamic offensive player I could get. And I convinced myself it wasn't going to happen. I said Owusu Koromoa, which I kind of thought was an okay fit. I thought Darius Toney was the only other option, but here they go. They get one of the fastest backs they can get.
So I actually said this same sentiment just earlier. Like, if you draft a quarterback, like, you're usually trying to find something to protect him in terms of linemen or a tight end or running game. So adding an explosive back certainly adds some protection to the franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, so it's a common trend in the National Football League to add protection.
And it gives him familiarity right off the bat.
What do we think that Travis Etienne showed in his senior year that he didn't show in his junior year? Was it more receiving production? Was it more comfort in that area? Because that's obviously a part of his game that's going to get a lot of use out of it. And I just love surrounding a rookie quarterback who is one of the best we've seen the last 4 or 5 years. Now just with more, I mean, you go out and get Marvin Jones. You already have DJ Chark out there, and now you have Travis Etienne and Laviska Shenault having more of a role. There's a lot to love.
Well,
Josh, remind us who you had for the Browns because their pick is in.
Greg Newsome.
Or more.
Greg Newsome.
Yeah.
All right. So
So
is he going to redeem himself here? What do you think, Brittany?
I personally think it's going to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can totally see that too.
They don't like linebackers.
Josh?
Is it Greg Newsome?
It's Greg Newsome. We're breaking the record tonight, baby! I told you yesterday. I told you yesterday. If Greg Newsome makes it to 26, there's a good chance that he is a member of the Cleveland Browns. We talked with Nathan Segura, who works for the Cleveland Browns, and he told us,
This was your pick.
You're welcome. Nathan Segura talks
my
so
God.
passionately about getting the chance to add Greg Newsome if the Browns are able to do that. Kyle, I saw the hand.
Yep.
I'm going to acknowledge of you. Go ahead.
So this was the one of the back 8 picks, worst kept secrets. The floor for Greg Newsome was going to be the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
This is something even Jeff Risdon, who's a guy that we know really, really well, one of his columns talked about Greg Newsome, the floor at 26. You think about having Denzel Ward on one side, signing Troy Hill to play potentially in the nickel, and then you get Greg Newsome on the other side. And listen, he's from the Great Lakes area, Northwestern, so they're fairly familiar. He's a regional guy for them. The big concern with him is durability. He has not played a full college football season yet in 3 tries, so that's the big question. But from a skill set perspective, taking Denzel Ward a couple of years ago in the top 10 and now getting Greg Newsome here at 26, this is a dream come true for the Browns from a value perspective.
And not only that, it's I think a home run for them because when you look at this Browns team, it's good. They made great splash in free agency. They made the playoffs last year. They won a playoff game. They have
Talk
the
to
pieces,
Joe about
right?
that next.
I think they have the pieces to make a run here. It's just about executing it. And this CB2 spot was really the last thing they needed.
I've called Cleveland a top 3 team in the AFC, and I think this really solidifies that in my mind, because one of the big question marks I had was at CB2. And you know Joe Woods, this defensive coordinator, he wants to run a lot of sub packages, a lot of 5-6 DB sets, and he needs corners that can tackle. And the thing about Greg Newsome is not only does he have ball skills and he has the ability to play in zone and man, but he is a committed tackler. He's a very willing participant in the run game, and so I think this allows them to play those heavy defensive back sets and know that they're going to have guys that are going to come downhill, trigger, fit the run, and tackle. They're going to play a lot of 3 safety stuff, and you can have Ward and Newsome on the outside. You can put 6 DBs on the field that can tackle, especially with Troy Hill. So I love the makeup of the secondary.
How do you feel?
Trev, my issue with this is that your best ability is always your availability.
No doubt.
And now you draft a guy who has the same kind of injury concerns as Greedy had this past year.
Right.
So you could find yourself in the same position that you were with 2 corners who can't stay on the field.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's not just 2 corners, because Denzel Ward's missed some time too.
Denzel Ward has
but I
missed
know
time.
that Denzel Ward missing time is a big reason why they were going to look at cornerback here. And so you're right. I mean, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, right? You've got some guys who are hurt, but you're betting on the talent. You're hoping that you can hit a little bit more of a healthy season for these guys. And if you do, like Joe was saying, you get a pretty strong chance.
Trev,
now we have
no such thing as too many good corners in the NFL.
Not with today's arms race.
Correct.
No way.
So that's just you're looking at Troy Hill and Denzel Ward, and you got Greg Newsome now as a part of that mix. And Cleveland's really rolled up in analytics, and you think about Andrew Berry and Paul De Podesta there as kind of the hierarchy that's in control of things from an analytics perspective. One of the big debates right now is pass rush value versus coverage value. And the Browns, as an analytic-backed team, obviously they signed Jadeveon Clowney, but pass rush value from Jadeveon Clowney the past 2 years has not been great. I think he has 3.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons.
You're hoping for the best, but
yes,
you're right. Yeah.
But investing the premium pick in another corner, the Browns were already one of the top rosters in the AFC. The big question for them is, what does Baker Mayfield look like? Because if Baker Mayfield takes the next step, man, get out of the way, because this Browns team is really talented.
They've done everything they can, because you draft a quarterback #1 overall when you have the chance in a pretty strong quarterback class. And I think the guys behind him, obviously Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, have been pretty great as well. But here we are, folks. This is it. This is the Green Bay Packers now at 27. There's been so much speculation. We opened up the show talking about a potential Aaron Rodgers trade. As of right now, Aaron Rodgers is still. Oh, sorry, I'm foolish. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself.
You can't do this to me,
I
Trevor.
wanted to talk about Aaron Rodgers so bad. You're
I
right.
thought it was a
you're
trade.
right.
I was like, what's happening?
Okay, so the Baltimore Ravens.
Tamara's looking at me like I got 8 eyes over
Yeah,
here. She's
I'll
like,
say-
"Excuse
Whoa.
you."
I mean, I know I'm blind. I do have context and everything. I had to make sure.
Oh,
But
so
it's
do I.
okay.
So do I. But I guess I'm just a little bit more blind than you.
I'm looking at this board right here.
Ooh.
Never in my mind would I have imagined Tevin Jenkins falling to 27.
Oh, no.
They
You're right.
just traded Orlando Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a major hole at right tackle. What does Baltimore want to do? They want to run the ball with Lamar Jackson and the J.K. Dobbins. That's what they want to run down people's throats. Tevin Jenkins is the best run blocker in this draft outside Penei Sewell. And Tevin Jenkins is a mauler. He's a physical downhill lineman. He fits exactly what Baltimore wants to do. And I know Eric DeCosta, the general manager, definitely didn't think that he'd still be available.
But they're also really bare at edge too.
Yeah,
So which area?
Josh is like, yeah, we are. Manifest.
Josh,
Manifest
it
this
sounds
one.
like Josh, you agree.
Who do you have?
Who do you
Jason
have?
Oweh.
Jason
Okay, so
Oweh.
he's got
We're
Jason.
winning the thing if Jason Oweh's the pick here.
Okay.
Over
All right.
Ojulari? Over Ojulari?
Ojelar's got a
Joe
degenerative
Tryon.
knee issue that was flagged at the combine. So that's the big concern with him. The
Yeah, I knew
concern
that.
with Jason Oweh was production versus traits. But I think about Baltimore and how frequently they are a blitz pressure package defense. They bring blitzes over the last 2 years, over 50% of their defensive snaps. Jason Oweh, when you bring pressure, you can manufacture one-on-one scenarios off the edge if you're bringing interior
we just had a
pressure.
camera on
So I think about the Baltimore Ravens, how much they like to blitz. I understand Jason Oweh has concerns with his ability to win one-on-ones and pass rush, but they lost Matt Judon, who Jason Oweh compares to as a more physically explosive version of the same player, and his sack production was dependent on their blitz packages. I think Oweh makes a ton of sense to Baltimore here at 27.
Yes, he does.
The pick is in.
Don't do it.
I can see Joe trying too.
The pick is in. We don't know what it is quite
Jordan,
yet.
are you going with supporting cast for Lamar Jackson, or are you going with helping out their edge needs?
Tevin Jenkins does make a lot of sense here.
I
I didn't
think
even think
Tevin
about
Jenkins
that.
does
I didn't
make a
even
lot
think
of
about
sense.
that, but it's a perfect fit. So I'm gonna go with Tevin Jenkins.
Don't discount my man Gregory Rousseau. I don't care. I know he's getting a lot of hate. The man's at the draft. He's in the green room.
I think
I
the
want to
Ravens
see him
would
come off
love
the
it.
board.
I think the Ravens would really like Gregory.
Kyle even said earlier in the show, Gregory Rousseau, we all appreciate what he is. I know I appreciate him a little more than most. If he puts on some more weight, his ceiling could be that of Calais Campbell, who is a Baltimore Raven already. I think Calais Campbell's 32, 33 years old. Wouldn't it make sense to get Gregory Rousseau in there to learn from a fellow Hurricane, to learn from a fellow 6'7", long arm, big body player, and be that replacement? I think Gregory Rousseau would make a lot of sense. However, I'm going with Tevin Jenkins. I'm just saying keep an eye out.
Joe, you've been really quiet on this one. I'm wondering what is in your mind right now.
I just think there's two logical solutions here. You can go get a pass rusher after losing Yannick Ngakoue and Matt Judon, or you can get the offensive tackle after trading away Orlando Brown. So I'm guessing Kyle's with his hands
Or-
up.
Stand up.
Yeah, so the question is,
Rashad
which
Bateman.
which players do you feel like are less likely to get back to you at 31? That's a big distinctive point to make here. Baltimore picks again in 4 picks. So you strategically now have a chance to look at who are the 3 teams behind me? Who do I feel is most likely to come off the board? I look at those teams and I'm concerned about, picking based off a very small sample size of being concerned with just a handful of teams. That's the big question for Baltimore.
All right, Josh, what you had Jason Oweh, right?
But we have another chance. We have another chance at 31 to get Jason Oweh. Because the pick right now is Rashad Bateman.
It is Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver. Oh man, this was
Green Bay.
This was our best available player at this point in the
no.
draft.
I mean, I think that this is fantastic. When the Ravens made the trade, I feel like it opened it up for them
had it in
to
my
take
mouth.
a wide receiver of this caliber.
Kyle, you've talked a lot about the types of receivers that you want to see Baltimore add for Lamar Jackson. And so here you go. It's Rashad Bateman. How do you like the fit?
So the big thing with Rashad Bateman and his fit with Baltimore is so much of what Bateman won at Minnesota was the RPO game, in breaking routes into the middle of the field, yards after catch. And if you think about where Lamar Jackson had his most success as a passer, it was in between the numbers. It's the stuff outside the numbers, throwing to the sideline and down the field, going all the way back to his time at Louisville, in which you saw the most discrepancy in his accuracy as a passer. So for Rashad Bateman, who thrives on RPO targets in traffic, in the middle of the field, in between the numbers, going to Baltimore, I think it's a phenomenal fit stylistically for where Bateman wins versus where Lamar Jackson wins as a passer. So I love this from a tailoring where Lamar wins to what skill set you're drafting for him with the wide receiver pick.
Josh, I know there's a lot going through your mind,
Yeah.
but we do have
probably
to
do my job,
We
huh?
do have to do a fantasy angle here because this is a skill position player. Kind of going off of what Kyle said there, adding this type of wide receiver to the Baltimore Ravens. It's a group that heavily relies on speed to the outside to get vertical, also the tight end offense over the middle. Now they kind of have a guy who at wide receiver can almost marry those two elements.
Yeah, and I can never tell, and I'm a huge Lamar Jackson fan, if it's a Lamar issue or if it's a Greg Roman issue or it's just how they're orchestrating their offense. But it took a very long time for even Lamar Jackson to eclipse where Dak Prescott was last season production-wise, throwing outside the numbers. But what Kyle was talking about, everything over the middle is perfect. And so now if you have Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman crossing over the middle, and then you have Marquise Hollywood Brown running deep, it makes a lot of sense. However, just the passing production, like the passing volume, might not be there very frequently. I mean, the Rashad Bateman conversation is also 2019 versus 2020.
I don't even
15 pounds losing 20
I don't even
pounds.
count 2020.
Right.
So 2020 he had COVID, right? So he had COVID before the season started. It impacted his ability to play explosively. But then he shows up at the pro day and he runs a better time than we possibly could have expected, even though it was at like 190 pounds versus I think he was on the Minnesota roster at 210. But the explosiveness was there. When you watched him on tape, he catches things in stride, even when they test his catch radius. It was throws that Tanner Morgan, bless him, he's a college quarterback, he's a fine college quarterback, but he would not consistently place the ball where it needed to be to maximize Rashad Bateman's ability to create yards after the catch. If it's 2 yards off his hip behind him and he's in stride, he's still catching that ball and he's converting those into yards after catch. So that's the big thing for Rashad Bateman. And say what you will about Lamar Jackson as a passer versus just being an impactful quarterback, he's going to be more accurate than what Tanner Morgan was to make the most of those in between the numbers targets.
If I could just close this fancy conversation real quick. By the way, over an Underdog, if you deposit right now, you get $25 for free. Do that right now.
Go, do it.
We know that on run plays, the Ravens were number 1 in the league last year. They were 32nd in pass plays. So while we like this from like a real football standpoint, it doesn't make any sense for Rashad Bateman to remain as the number 119 overall player, right behind Mike Williams and Jalen Reagor, ahead of Marvin Jones. Like, I'm taking Marvin Jones over him. Gabriel Davis all the time now. So love this for the fit and to help propel the Ravens, but from my perspective, doesn't do much for me.
Josh, thank you so much for that last nugget from a fantasy perspective. Let's throw it over now to Ben.
Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver out of Minnesota, now for the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, they're right. I mean, this Ravens passing offense struggled when it got to the playoffs. If you get this heavy play action approach into 3rd and long situations after straight drop back pass, offensive coordinator Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson, they struggled to find much space down the field. Listen, Marquise Brown was a first-round pick 2 years ago. He was heavily undersized and has struggled to succeed in the league. Miles Boykin was a 3rd-round pick 2 years ago. They like him as a blocker, but that athleticism hasn't necessarily generated to big plays. Mark Andrews is the tight end, but this team needed a possession receiver, a high-volume guy who could catch consistently over the middle of the field and move the sticks. Rashad Bateman, one of our Panini players, a tremendous fit as the 5th wide receiver off the board in Minnesota. After that pick, it is the New Orleans Saints selecting at 28, and the man for the job is a surprise. Houston edge, Peyton Turner, a New Orleans Saints scouting team. Don't think we really had Peyton Turner as a first rounder, did we?
Does anyone need anything else?
Nope.
You guys are doing All right, Kyle. The Saints pick is in. It's Peyton Turner. Where do you see him being a step in the right direction for this New Orleans Saints team?
Well, I think this is trying more than anything else to recover from losing Trey Hendrickson in free agency. He went to Cincinnati after they lost Carl Lawson. But also, New Orleans spent 2 first-round picks 2 years ago on getting Marcus Davenport, and that was a serious investment for them. They jumped up to 14 overall in the draft order to draft Marcus Davenport to be that other guy opposite of Cameron Jordan. That has not materialized. Trey Hendrickson had 12 sacks last year. He left in free agency. And they're a team that's in a tough spot because as much as we talk about salary cap as a myth, right? The New Orleans Saints, yeah, they were $100 million over the cap and they got underneath of it, but at what cost? You think about the players that they lost as a part of that, the inflexibility that they now have because of contract restructures and having guys that are going to be locked in for the next 2 or 3 years before you have a chance to get those contracts out of your system. They were never going to stand a chance to get Trey Hendrickson back in the building. So Peyton Turner from Houston is a player who I love to hear Joe's insight, as Joe was the guy who was responsible for Houston for our regional scouting for our TDN staff. But traits are aplenty, but it's a question of how quickly can he make an impact, which is not dissimilar from what Marcus Davenport had when he came out.
Yeah, well, at least they're not trying to, capitalize on the end of the Drew Brees window. This is a different situation, and they stood pat and drafted him late in the order, which makes a lot more sense. Peyton Turner, high character guy, tremendous traits, size, athleticism, length, and for a guy that's a 270 pounds, 6'5", you don't really see guys that are typically as loose as he is, and so he can really turn those tight corners and really reduce rush angles, and I like a lot about him. I think he's going to need some polish, but we're talking about the end of the first round here, and I think this is when you can take a swing on traits, especially at pass rusher. And so this would be, if you go back to that Marcus Davenport trade, if they just would have picked him at 27, you're like, okay. But you gave up that extra first-round pick. I think this is maybe learning from the mistake a little bit, and good on them for a team that is kind of in flux, but using their top pick on a premium position. I always appreciate that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The Saints were one of those teams that was rumored to get all the way up even into the top 10.
Yeah.
Or even higher into the 20s. Who do we think that they potentially could be going after? Like, since they took an edge rusher here, could it have been like Jalen Phillips or Quiddy Pay or someone like that?
I thought it'd be a corner,
Yeah.
like the whole time. That's what I thought. I
There are still
thought
some corners on the board. that
they'd
they
go
overlooked.
top 10 for Horn or Surtain.
Got it.
That's what I think, and I think that this was kind of a contingency plan. I'm not so sure that they loved edge enough to say, hey, we'll go into the top 10 to go get Quiddy or Jalen Phillips. At least that's what I believe. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that it would have been for a corner, or do you think edge could have still been on the board?
I think it would have been for a corner, and I think the fact that the 4 corners that we all had first-round grades on are the 4 corners that went so far.
Yeah.
So perhaps the league valued the corner class as we did, as being a mainly 4 guys at the top and a solid second tier, but there's a gap, right?
Yeah.
And so once those 2 players were in the top 10, Newsom has injury concerns,
Right.
Farley has injury concerns, it makes trading up a lot less likely, right? And so we just got where the pick is in from Green Bay. In my mock, I had Barmore.
I was just about to say.
I had Christian Barmore. I
so.
think adding some help for Kenny Clark in the interior would make a lot of sense. Joe, you think Elijah Moore?
You come on, you got to go.
I was
throw
just
Aaron
about to say
Rodgers
he's
a
not
bone.
on there.
He's
right?
not going to be a Packer. They're trading him.
This gives you a chance. I mean,
yeah.
Can we? I mean, I think there's a good chance of it. All the reports are that Aaron Rodgers is going to be out of town, but if you're Green Bay, you have to fight that.
You were not
trading.
I knew that they were not going to trade him tonight. There is no way. This is one of the best quarterbacks who's ever played the game, coming off an MVP season. You cannot give in to an emotional 24 hours and trade him just because it's draft night. I'm with you 100%.
A weapon like Elijah Moore might make Aaron Rodgers say, maybe I like Devontae Adams and Elijah Moore and bringing back Aaron Jones. Tevin Jenkins also in play, right? I mean,
That's right,
They lost.
What about Eric Stokes?
Yeah.
Is that who you have?
Eric Stokes, let's do it.
You have Eric Stokes?
Yes. We need it to happen. We need
I-
it to happen.
I don't think it'll
Don't
happen.
root for
but I'm
Aaron,
just
root
gonna-
for Josh.
Josh, it's Eric Stokes.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh my Lord! No way!
We are rolling, ladies and gentlemen.
That's unbelievable.
We are rolling.
First round.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
The streak lives on.
Oh my goodness.
They don't take receivers in the first
Rick
round.
Osman, who?
Dre is our Georgia guy, right? He's a cornerback, former
Josh.
cornerback at Cal. Dre, I'm interested in your thoughts on the fit Eric Stokes with the Green Bay Packers.
I think it is a great fit for what they would like to do. I think it pairs him up with another exceptional corner in Jair on the opposite side. I'm kind of surprised here. I can't lie. I thought they would go offense and add maybe a receiver here. Not sure what the thought process is, but I do like Stokes. Maybe a little bit rich for me where he's picked, but I do like the player.
Well said.
I love it. Of course, Josh likes it. He likes to move it. Who else are we hoping for at this point, Josh?
I mean,
Because we're going for the record at this point.
we've got 2 options at 31 with the Ravens. It's either Owe or Creed Humphrey, which was a little bit of a, and then Buffalo Bills, Asante Samuel.
Okay,
That's
we
what
got
we're going
Asante Samuel as well, so we see eye to eye there. What about the Bucks? What do you think?
for. I had
Who do you have?
Barmore. Tell me, Trev.
I mean,
Give me
I
the good
said
news.
Barmore too.
I don't know.
Right.
I wish I had a better answer for you,
Sue's
but
on
I
a
don't.
one-year deal.
Tampa
No,
Bay
you're right.
Trey with no
Sue's on a
answers.
You're
one-year
totally
deal.
right, but they also have no depth behind Shaq Barrett and James Pierre-Paul. They like Anthony Nelson, but I mean, Anthony Nelson hasn't really proven anything for them. They could certainly go Barmore. You having that as a pick is well within play for it to happen, but I don't have a lot of conviction one way or the other with any position or player, honestly.
Yeah.
So with this pick of Eric Stokes, does this say anything about the direction of Aaron Rodgers? Like, should we read into that anymore? With someone like Elijah Moore out there.
Yeah.
He's gone, man.
Yeah, the Bills are in play for more. JOK still here. Tevin Jenkins, Asante Samuel Jr., Tyson Campbell.
Me $2.
Jason Oweh still available. I think there's
We
a lot
did
of
all of those mock drafts
Jordan
with
Kyle.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah making it to the end of the first round and sometimes out,
200 pennies?
and you just go, wow, there's no way this happens. And here we are 3 picks away from the first round being over, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah
Right.
is throwing the
But
ball.
I think that's because of what you guys said earlier. It's like finding a space
It's hard.
that hybrid guy.
Yeah,
fits.
hard.
but I have not heard a negative word about the guy.
Does Denver move back up for him?
Why would they?
Why wouldn't they?
You're in no rush. Like, look at the
They
teams
didn't
who
save
are,
their picks
look at
for
the,
Aaron Rodgers.
Look at the
Well, that might be true.
Look at
Joe.
the teams who are still available in the first round. You have the Bills, the Ravens, and the Bucks. And the Bucks brought everybody back. I know
Yeah.
Levante David, he's getting quote-unquote older, but he's got plenty left in the tank.
so, too.
Why
Yep.
would Denver move up for JOK? You're in no urgent position to do
Save
so.
your picks. You need your assets.
That's right. Save your picks.
You need your assets.
I don't know.
So the Bills are on the clock.
All right.
So go ahead, Joe.
Bills are on the clock.
This
Joe's
is your
been
song and
waiting.
dance.
Tevin's on the board.
Brother, I run to the podium. I mean, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think Tevin Jenkins is obviously in play. Jason Oweh, the edge rusher. Asante Samuel Jr.
Yep.
would
I
definitely
agree.
be to
I agree with
Josh,
Josh.
Morris's delight and certainly a logical selection.
I
So
think we break the record if Asante Samuel was the pick. Like the
You've
overall ever record.
got to be close.
And with Jalen Waddle in the division, you might need to go get you some Asante Samuel Jr. So I think the Bills have to feel really happy.
I
with the
truly
board.
hope he breaks the record.
Maybe that is a
Yeah,
signal that,
because-
look, there are options. The Bills need to get some cheap labor on the roster. Maybe they trade out of this pick.
Josh, have you done a huddle report mocks for 5
Yeah, I
years?
suck at them.
Because I was going to say,
Not this year you don't,
this
brother.
56 isn't just,
All-
or whatever it's going to be.
All I needed was 2 months of fun employment to get to this point. You know? I just
It
needed
was-
2
it
months.
was
to
about-
step
It
back.
throw a bone to the TDN
Yes.
crew.
And then
We collaborated
Yeah,
yesterday. Yeah, there we go.
Thank
There we
you.
you're never
go.
getting rid of me. I'm going down there every year from now on.
That's
We're
right.
gonna
That's
try
right.
to repeat
And look, as
over
long as
and
somebody
over.
in the group is winning it. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so Asante Samuel Jr., both
Yep.
of you two actually pounded the table for this one. I would love to hear if you've reconsidered since we talked about that.
Jordan?
I'm on the fence here. There's a lot of different directions that the Bills could go. I'm gonna go with Elijah Moore. I'm gonna go with him as the pick here.
I have not come off of Asante Samuel, and Joe has talked a lot about the dynamics of the Buffalo Bills, their front office, why they make the decisions that they do. 5-star prospects, SEC prospects, that's not necessarily the way that they go. And Joe, I'd love for you to extrapolate on your theory as to why the Bills, they've only taken, what, 2 or 3
Yeah.
prospects from the SEC during the entire tenure of this
Yeah.
Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era.
That's not like the rest of the NFL, right? The SEC pretty much dominates the draft, and the Bills have steered away from SEC players under Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. You think about Beane and McDermott; they're both self-made men in the NFL. Started off as interns and worked their way up to the head coaching and general manager positions, and so the Bills tend to stay away from some of those guys that are in the SEC, those 5 stars, guys that have had everything good come to them all the time. And, they want guys that are grinders and haven't been told that they're the best thing since sliced bread for their whole football career. So maybe that sways the Bills again away from an SEC player.
I'm looking at the board here and the available players, and to be candid, we don't know, sitting here today, the medical history of Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah.
But he's staring me in the face. And when I think about what the Bills need in terms of a pass rusher, a guy who can be explosive off the edge, a guy who can turn a corner, a guy who has speed and burst, that's where I would lean. And that's what I think the Bills are missing.
Yeah.
But again, there's a story out there that his knee, could be a little messed up. It might be a degenerative injury. But his talent and tape and production, he's well worth the pick number 30.
Josh, are you familiar with your situation right now in the mock draft rankings? I know you know what your score is, but do you know where you stand relative to the rest of the field?
No, because I can't. It's not updating quick
Yeah.
enough.
So I have Chrome and then I have Safari on my laptop.
yeah.
So I broke out Safari.
Yeah.
So take a little check. You have a 5-point lead
Let's go.
on second place through pick 29. You have 55 points.
Okay.
Next best has 50 points.
Wow.
And the record that we saw was 57.
57.
So what am I right now?
So if you hit one more match, Asante Samuel Jr., you set the record
Yeah.
for the Huddle Report.
Yeah. Yep.
That's bananas.
I'm just putting it out there. And we still have Jason Oweh to the Ravens at 31. Or Creed Humphrey.
Or Christian Barmore to the Bucks.
So we have plenty of options.
Right,
I just want to make sure you know totally
you.
where you stand.
Now, here's my only concern.
Yep.
What is the city that we're close to? Atlanta.
Atlanta Falcons.
Could this be a 28-3 scenario we have going right
Oh
now?
no. The pick is in.
Manifesting.
So, wow, the skid is over.
The pick is in.
The pick is in, and we have the pick.
Uh-oh.
No. Don't look at me
The
like
skid is
that.
over.
I'm vindicated.
The pick is in.
Uh-oh.
You got it?
The skid is over.
The pick
Thoughts?
is in.
The thoughts
It's-
on
it's
the pick? It's
Gregory Rousseau. Yeah, defense.
Gregory
Oh.
Rousseau.
Wait, Joe, you're a Bills guy.
Yes.
How are you feeling about this?
So this is very much in line with the messaging that came from Brandon Beane in his pre-draft press conference, and he said, "We're thinking a lot about long-term needs, and this is definitely a long-term need for the Bills at defensive end, where their two lead guys, Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, are both in their mid-30s. They're both on expiring contracts, and they needed to get younger and better off the edge. They just watched Kansas City and the Patrick Mahomes, really give them a lot of fits, and then you watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their front seven get after Patrick Mahomes, and they had a lot of success. And I think this is definitely one of those moves to help with the pass rush, and it's definitely a developmental type player. I don't know how much the Bills will get out of him this year, but the traits are there that the Bills like in defensive ends, and I know that Brentley is swooning because he's been pounding the table for an edge rusher, or for Gregory Rousseau in the first round.
So I've gotten so much flack from never wavering off Gregory Rousseau.
Yeah.
Never. Not
Same.
once. Not once.
Same.
And yes, I acknowledge the flaws.
I'm 24th
Is he-
overall on my board.
Is he the most explosive pass rusher? No. Does he have a small sample size? Yes. Do I wish he played in 2020? Yes.
There's a lot of questions that don't have great answers.
However, the potential and upside here was substantial. And for a team like Buffalo, who has very little holes and not real pressing needs, right? They are in a position to take this flyer because the upside of him hitting is so sky high. And to me, his floor isn't as low as people think. He's very good against the run, in my opinion. Yes, he plays a little high, but I think he's strong to hold the point. And I think he fits a 4-3 scheme. I love this pick. I'm happy for Gregory Rousseau. I'm happy just for the Bills Mafia.
1 second before you go, Trevor.
Yes.
Apologies for the graphic that is up right now. Baltimore is picking next, not the Chiefs.
Yep.
There was a small mistake there. Again, Baltimore is picking next, not the Chiefs.
Oh,
Trevor, go ahead.
Graphics people making up for my my Packers selection at 27, so it's good that it all evens out.
Yes.
Joe,
Oh, I got pretty good.
the Bills took Ed Oliver
Yes.
a couple years ago. This was an oddly sized, I'll just say, interior defensive lineman. Now they take a very unique kind of defensive lineman that's played a lot of different spots. Is he too light? Is he too heavy? What, depending on how you see him. Does this just show that Buffalo as a staff is not afraid to take a chance on almost these tweener kind of players if they see the
Yeah,
talent?
I mean, I think if you look at Brandon Beane's entire history picking in the first round, whether that's Tremaine Edmonds or Josh Allen or Ed Oliver and now Gregory Rousseau, it's been swings, right? Swings on traits. It's not necessarily guys that check every box, whether that's from a college production standpoint or from a size threshold standpoint. And so Beane is willing to take those swings. It's worked out for him. And obviously this is a need for the Bills long term. And so I know Brentley is high on him. Kyle, I think you had a first round grade on Rousseau as well.
I did.
So there is a lot of love on this scouting staff for this pick.
Kyle, saw the hand?
Yeah, no, I just wanted kind of to talk about some of the dynamics of the first round and the way that it has played out versus the TDN consensus rankings amongst our scouting staff. We have the vast majority, only Mac Jones, Alex Leatherwood, Jamin Davis, Peyton Turner, and Eric Stokes are the only 5 players at this point in time who are outside of TDN's top 32 consensus rankings. And what's important to remember here is we're grading based off of traits that would be applicable to all 32 teams. So I'm not going to sit here and say, wow, the Washington football team reached on Jamin Davis because they drafted him at 19 versus their rankings versus the TDN consensus rankings. But I do think it's interesting that all things considered, we're staying relatively chalk, where we have 25 out of 30 first-round picks thus far who are within TDN's top 32 overall players in the draft.
Yeah. I mean, it's a job well done by y'all and the scouting staff, and we opened up the show talking about how you guys have ranked 400 prospects, and that's final reports on 400 prospects. That's not even talking about everything that you've been able to gather with those guys throughout the process, as there are players that you have notes on that you maybe didn't finalize. But I do want to get your thoughts on the Buffalo pick there.
So I think the biggest thing with Greg Rousseau is if you ask him to play at 265 and play off the edge, you're asking him to play at a losing formula to his skill set based off what he showed at Miami. Where he showed the most success was playing down in the B gap, on passing downs, playing on the nose, and rushing in the A gaps, and being an interior pass rusher. The comparison is how teams have traditionally used Jadeveon Clowney in a lot of pass rush situations, which is inside. Don't ask him to take half-man relationships, set up offensive tackles, and utilize his hands to win off the edge. You got to ask him to use that blend of size, length, explosiveness that he has. He had one of the best 10-yard splits in this year's draft class for defensive ends. His pro day was not good, but his 10-yard split was really good. So you have to ask him to stack on a little bit of weight, in my opinion, do the opposite of what the Bills did with A.J. Epinesa, which was to draft a guy and to ask him to drop 10, 15, 20 pounds off his frame. Yeah. Ask him to put on some weight and be that interior hybrid pass rusher. That's the pathway to success for Gregory Rousseau, not the other way around. So I just think this is a conditional, and for me personally, it was a projection that was conditional based on you have to ask him to do the right things that are going to allow him to take where he won in 2019 as a redshirt soft freshman.
Right.
And have success in 2019, which is winning inside.
Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I like the pick personally, and he was one of the more polarizing prospects of this draft class, just because everybody loves those explosive, bendy guys off of the edge, and Rousseau just wasn't that guy. But anytime a player is 6'6", 265 pounds, puts up 19.5 tackles for loss and 15.5 sacks,
you gotta pay attention.
And only their second year ever playing the position, that's going to get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Jordan, while we're still with you, Baltimore's back on the clock and the pick is in. They just picked a few picks ago, but where do you think they're going to go here?
It has to be an edge rusher or a safety. I would go with Zizo
You're making a
Jabari.
reaction. I feel like
But
stop with those Jabari. No way.
But Trayvon Moehrig wouldn't surprise me here.
Josh?
I mean, who do you
Josh,
have then?
these people are coming for a reason.
Josh?
Okay,
Josh?
Jason Oweh?
Josh.
My guy?
Yes.
Jason Oweh the pick.
Let's go, baby! That's awesome. We just made history here on
Let's go!
There it
To
is.
Josh Norris.
To Josh Norris, everybody.
Josh Norris.
Man, that's amazing. We just had somebody in the building here at Brinks HQ.
There it
Wait.
is.
Great.
Go ahead.
Wait,
Mighty swell.
Record.
Mighty swell.
He's got some
got
mighty
his
swell in
money
his
swell.
hand. He just broke.
It could be anyone.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. They'll get the shot. You take the
Wow.
drink.
Man.
There it is.
That,
Yes. Yes.
Keep going.
Toast.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
that is Josh. How do you feel, man?
Woo.
How does it feel?
You know what? Probably the year that I did the least research, the least amount of connections.
Don't tell people that.
Talk to this world expert.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Just had to travel, get in a plane, and come down here.
makes sense.
Thanks for all the help, everyone.
Yeah, man,
we do what we can.
This is so fantastic that we got to witness somebody who not only just
It
won
makes sense.
the Huddle Report contest, but had the best record ever. I mean, like, this is what we do. Kyle, we do so many of these. This is what we do. This is our moneymaker. This is our conversation starter. We do mock drafts, and for Josh to have one of the most accurate ones ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's crazy.
That's cool. That's
Can I actually say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is, okay, so actually 10 years ago is kind of when I got my start in this whole business. Because 10 years ago, I was in the Rams draft room in 2011 for all 7 rounds of that draft. So it just makes sense. A decade later, for this all to come full circle, be here with all of you, and to do this. This is really cool.
And just, you know,
really cool.
Josh, I'd just like to ask you, what was the first thing I told you when you walked in today?
You like my mock draft?
No, I liked your mock draft, and here we are. Here we are. It looked good from afar.
Wow.
So Jason Oweh, the fit with Baltimore, we talked about it a little bit when they were on the clock at 27. His traits in the Matt Judon type role, and obviously that's been the player that they was in the building. They obviously lost Yannick Ngakoue, who they brought in mid-season this past year, after a short stay in Minnesota. The Jason Oweh fit in Baltimore relative to the Matt Judon role makes so much sense, but he's a more explosive version of the same player. Judon came out of Grand Valley State. No idea how to rush the passer, but he was a super toolsy guy. He had prototypical size and length. Jason Oweh is the same thing, but he's coming out of Penn State. He had good ability to defend the run. He took steps forward in that part of his game in 2020. The Ravens should be excited about what they get here in Jason Oweh.
I'm so happy we have this moment. I just can't stop smiling about it. That's just so awesome. So, y'all, I'll talk to you guys down here. Jason Oweh, I'm actually going to just start it with this. Going in the first round. 0 sacks last year.
Yeah.
Hell of an athlete, but what do you guys think about him getting in the first round?
I mean, I think it's a total projection, right? I think Jason Oweh, what is he, 6'5", 200-something pounds, ran a 4.3 40. Yes, he had 0 sacks.
Got it
but
right on my mark.
The upside
Trying.
still.
Trying.
Joe
Trying.
Is it? Is it?
Hey, that's another point! That's another point, baby! That's another point!
Let's go!
Style point, baby.
Y'all owe me $2.
All right.
And you owe me.
Yeah,
I owe you $2.
I had trying on my mind.
Yes.
How do you
Last
feel
pick.
about this pick?
Okay, so hold on. I'm sending Josh his congratulatory tweet for him breaking the record.
I didn't
Okay.
get 60.
They try.
All right, so
Break
this
down.
one makes a lot of sense. Jason, like the general manager in Tampa Bay, he always keeps close tabs on the Washington players. You know, Vita Vea, obviously, they drafted him a couple of years ago. He's always looking at those guys, whether it's in the secondary or on the defensive line. But he has a really good finger on the pulse of what's going on at Washington. And when there's a player who has a high ceiling, like Joe Tryon does, this makes a lot of sense. This is one that was very, very common. We knew that they liked him. There's not a lot of edge depth behind Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul. And so with both of those guys kind of coming up over the next couple of years, and Barrett's there for the long term, we think Pierre-Paul is kind of there for the long term because I'd never doubt the man who's overcome as much as he has. There's still going to be snaps that they've got to create. And they like Anthony Nelson, but Joe Tryon, they think that gives them a higher ceiling of athleticism. So this one makes a lot of sense. To me, it's actually a little bit chalky because I've had Joe Tryon here to the Buccaneers for a while, and you felt like this could be the pick here, and it ends up being the pick for the Buccaneers.
And Brentley seems to agree with you because he's been nodding his head the entire time.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
That's the guy I had going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for a team that returns 22 of 22 starters, where do you try to fit a player, right? And to me, it's always the defensive line. Because the defensive line, out of any position, rotates guys in and out.
No doubt.
So if you want a first-year player to have an impact, it was going to be defensive line. And I knew the Husky connection.
Yep.
And Joe Tryon is a guy who opted out last year, but athletically tested through the roof at his pro day. Mm-hmm. Really good upside player, a guy they can develop and bring along slowly. To me, it made too much sense, and I'm glad to see it kind of come to fruition.
Brentley, thank you so much for co-signing Trevor. I'm sure he really enjoyed that.
Appreciate it.
We'll be right back with more after this break.
Setting lineups, it has never been easier to have a shot at the $1 million grand prize. Underdog Fantasy lets you draft a season-long league in seconds, thanks to their slick mobile app and state-of-the-art website. And best of all, if you don't love it, there's a $100 money back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Draft for the 2021 season today.
Freeze sleeve. Freeze it. Sleeve it. Relieve it. Go to freesleeve.com.
This is where it starts, where your story begins. This is the trail you blaze yourself. And step by step, you get stronger, faster, better. This is where it starts. How will you finish? Angles, we're with you every step of the way.
Thanks for...
When your mask comes off, your breath comes out. Make sure it doesn't stink. Stay healthy and fresh. Soul and science. Immune Fresh. The all-natural breath mint. Vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc, Wellmune. Save yourself, save us all from your breath. Go to immunefresh.com.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. From Kill Cliff, the #1 clean energy drink in the mind of Joe Rogan, comes the Flamin' Joe. Sugar-free, B vitamins, electrolytes, all them good drink things. An epic spicy pineapple fusion from out of this world, straight into your drink hole. Own it. KillCliff.com.
Brinks.tv, where winning is like a wiener. The bigger, the better. Brinks TV, the intergalactic home of winning.
A long time ago, people used to watch TV and win jack squat. In other words, you will win nothing and like it. But now, Brinks.tv brings you the ultimate show where the whole frickin' point is to win prizes every day. Good God, man, behold, the Emperor. Winning never felt so good because he or she or it or they or whatever pronoun the Emperor identifies as could be nie Freunde. Whatever he or she or nie calls himself, herself or nie self, you will only win when the decision is made by the Emperor.
Best ball season is here, and it's bigger than ever. With no waivers, trades, or setting lineups, it has never been easier to have a shot at the $1 million grand prize. Underdog Fantasy lets you draft a season-long league in seconds, thanks to their slick mobile app and state-of-the-art website. And best of all, if you don't love it, there's a $100 money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Draft for the 2021 season today.
Burrings TV.
We're back with more 2021 NFL draft coverage on the Draft Network. Ben, glad to have you over here with us.
Yeah.
How would you assess the first round now that we've completely wrapped it up?
Well, I would say that it was pretty expected, given that we had 59 points on it. Hello. You think you knew what was going down? No, it was fun. Quiet on trades, quiet on movement. A couple of surprising followers in Owusu Koromoa and Tevin Jenkins, but they were players I think we mostly thought would fall a little bit, and then fell quite a ways. And other than that, not too many surprising picks, right? I think when the Vikings come flying up, you think, or excuse me, the Jets come flying up, you think, you know what? This Joe Douglas is a trench player. Let's make it Elijah Vera Tucker. When it's Miami at 18 with all the edges left, you say, all right, they can take the best edge on the board, you know? So I wasn't too stunned or surprised by anything. I think it was a pretty standard first round. Surprised by the lack of trades. We saw that last year when teams felt really uncertain about the boards because of the pandemic. We thought this year they'd be more steady and more in place, but really only 1 or 2 major trades there in the first round. I think it was 3 total, and then the 20s were completely silent.
Do you think that had anything to do with how different the pre-draft process was this year?
Yeah, because when you have this weird pre-draft process, what we've been hearing from the jump is the boards from a team-to-team basis are way different than they usually are. They're usually pretty different, but they're even more different this year. And so if you're sitting there with a guy super high on your board, I mean, Ron Rivera and Marty Mayhew, who run the show in Washington, said Jamin Davis was the highest-ranked defensive player they had on their board. You usually don't sit and wait at 19 for the highest-ranked defensive player on your board. You usually go get him. But they clearly felt comfortable doing so. You know, you do the work. You try to predict who's going to go ahead of you. And so you don't have to move for that player. And that's a big deal because it gives you more pay from the back. And so certainly the difference from team board to team board allows you to feel a little more confident that guys you have ranked highly might not be ranked highly elsewhere, and you can wait for them.
Kyle, obviously we said this in the beginning. When you have this different pre-draft experience, it creates a lot of surprises in the first round. What were you most surprised about in the first round?
I mean, we weren't necessarily surprised to see Justin Fields fall outside the top 10, but Chicago making the move to go get him, I think, was not a move that was necessarily expected. We expected the Patriots to make a move for Justin Fields and the Bears to make a move for Mac Jones.
Patriots, not Fields, and Bears, not Mac, was totally topsy-turvy.
Yes.
Right? Like, everybody was in on, oh, the Bears will make this mistake, and the Patriots will be the smart ones. Ryan Pace, baby, let's go from the trenches.
And for all of the flack that Ryan Pace caught and has caught, and catches, you can really still leave present time for the decision to draft Mitchell Trubisky in that draft class to get Justin Fields at 11, and the cost was a future first-round pick. You give up 20, and you move up, and there's some extra assets involved there. But that price, when you consider my job is on the line, Matt Nagy's job is on the line, you get arguably the most dynamic quarterback when you take into account his arm talent and his running ability, and you blend those things together. Now, it's not the most easy transition to the NFL per se, but Justin Fields, Ben, I know he charted very well in CQ in a lot of areas.
And what did they do to get to get Trubisky working in that Nagy offense? They started booting him out. Nobody got booted more besides Trey Lance in college than Justin Fields did. Sprint outs and boots on third down. They wanted him outside of the pocket. They wanted him on the move. The other thing is, we know that, all right, no matter what quarterback ends up in Chicago, man, they're trying to trade Anthony Miller. He's on a contract year. And Allen Robinson, they franchise tagged him. He clearly wants out. Robinson's never played with a good quarterback. He wants out of Chicago. Fields isn't just maybe a great quarterback for them. He might be Allen Robinson saving for them. I mean, if you're able to get him starting and be successful in year one, we know how much Fields likes to target outside receivers and high volume his guys. He will throw contested catches. Allen Robinson's good at those. You might be able to keep Allen Robinson, a player who was trying to get out of here a few months ago. Like, that's how this trajectory turns so quickly. And that defense is pretty solid. No more Kyle Fuller, right? It's a few years from Big Ben.
Yeah, Eddie Jackson.
Yeah, there's a reason they've been 8-8 in back-to-back seasons despite having not the best quarterback. Like, there are pieces in Chicago and a jolt in the arm at quarterback, and that's really what we think Justin Fields might be, as a jolt in the arm. I mean, that's franchise changing.
If Green Bay trades Aaron Rodgers and the
Chicago.
Bears start Justin Fields, no offense to you, Jordan, but Chicago's in a runner of this division.
They got some noise to make.
I like how absolutely nobody even mentions Detroit whatsoever. Like, and Detroit will be there, and that'll be nice. Congrats to Detroit. But right, I think that this NFC North, which last year we came in and we said this thing's pretty wide open. Green Bay obviously established themselves right away. Congrats on Eric Stokes. I think that'll be nice. You need to get your quarterback healthy, or your quarterback happy, because if things are falling apart there in Green Bay, yeah, I agree. Chicago's nicely positioned to make some really weird noise. This was a 5-0 team through 5 weeks last year. We forget this. So it's going to be fun.
Jordan, you look like you disagreed with what Brentley said. You were like,
I'm not sure he did.
What are your
I'm a little jealous they got Justin Fields because we have to play against them twice a year now. So, I mean, I think it was the best selection of the first round, in my opinion, especially considering the value that they got at 11. I didn't see him slipping that far, maybe even past Denver at 9. I was really surprised he got past them. So for them to trade up and go get their guy and try to correct the mistake of Mitchell Trubisky, now they have some more excitement there in Chicago just because the future wasn't looking bright with Andy Dalton, quote-unquote QB1 there. So getting Justin Fields now helps them a lot.
Can we talk about the other side of this quarterback coin? I don't get Mac to New England. I get Mac to New England. Nick Saban.
It's such a risk.
Pocket passer, right. But here's my thing. This Steve Sarkisian offense at Alabama, okay, Mac Jones was a facilitator. He was a point guard. He just got the ball to open receivers. Usually when we talk about that player, he's throwing shallow. He's throwing quick game, right? It's 3-step drops, and it's all underneath, and I'm going to let them create. They went max protect. They went 2-3 receivers in the concept. They went deep crossing routes, and their wide open windows, they were 15 yards down the field. They were 20 yards down the field. They weren't short. This is not, Josh McDaniels doesn't, this is Earhart Perkins. We're going to put multiple guys in the concept. We're going to go shallow. We're going to run option routes. So even if Mac Jones is the point guard facilitator type that Brady was and Garoppolo was, his best attribute, what he brought to that offense that Tua didn't, was the deep ball. It wasn't the short to intermediate stuff. And so if they're going to integrate him successfully, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar especially, vertical. This has to be able to get guys open down the field.
And Ben, to further extrapolate off of that, their two biggest signings on offense were Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, who got two of the biggest free agent contracts we've ever seen tight ends
get. And tight end 4 right now in the league.
Correct. So you think about those two guys and their ability to win to all areas of the field, and versus where they ran the majority of their routes. And I think there is a bit of a stylistic conflict with Mac Jones, and that's not to say it won't work, but my whole argument when that pick was made was you're banking on Mac Jones playing like the next version of Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, as an underwhelming physical skill set passer. That is a huge roll of the dice, and we'll see what happens, but I do think it's interesting. Bill Belichick is one of the oldest head coaches in the league. He's within striking distance of Don Shula's all-time wins record.
How close is
he? He's within 40-something wins of the all-time wins record.
All right.
But that's going to need 3 years at a minimum to get there, and he just turned 69 this offseason. Right?
So you said it was a roll of the dice to try to get a guy that's going to be similar to Tom Brady. Don't you think the Giants kind of did the same thing with Daniel Jones and Eli Manning?
I'd be interested, as the CQ guy, what you feel is those two quarterbacks and their strengths and weaknesses.
Yes, and it's not going well. You know what I mean? Like, right? I mean, if you want to put it like, in a nice little box for you, I mean, sure. The thing with Jones, and then he was initially in that Pat Shurmur offense, and now he's in that Jason Garrett offense, is he was more so the quick point guard ball distributor we're talking about, and that was Manning's approach. Now, Manning and a lot of those, we're talking about Tom Brady, we're talking about Eli Manning. These were quarterbacks in the 2000s who really hit their peak, right? That was a different time in the league. It was West Coast pocket passing offenses. And the big thing was there was the CBA that was negotiated then allowed for a lot more practice time. You got a lot more reps. And to run those West Coast offenses, you needed time. It was all about timing. It was all about processing. And that's how you could see a Peyton or an Eli or a Tom or a Drew or a Phillip Rivers walk up to the line of scrimmage and go, I know where the ball's going. If they do this, I do that. I do this, I do that. And I'm just going to quick game you to death. And you got to be a genius to quick game somebody to death. 2011 CBA cuts down on that practice time. And all of a sudden, these pocket passers, they're not getting the time and the experience necessary to pull that off. And that's why we're seeing more mobile quarterbacks, Justin Fields, rise up in the rankings.
Yeah, so you're talking about nickel and diming opposing teams, right?
Yes.
You watched the Steve Sarkisian coaching clinic the same way that I did.
Everybody should.
What did he talk about as far as explosive plays and that being the recipe to winning the game versus asking your offense, all 11 guys, 11, 10, 9, 12 plays consecutively, executing optimally without any mistakes? That's a losing formula.
Right.
It's inevitable that if you ask your offense to go 10, 11, 12 plays consecutively without a mental error that's going to create a negative play because you can't create explosive plays, you're not going to consistently score touchdowns.
Right.
And that's the recipe to playing winning football.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to, we're going to full circle this puppy. You watch and you get back to the touchdowns that Chicago Bears scored last year with Mitchell Trubisky. The 15-play drives. Right, we're going to get the 3rd and 3, and hopefully David Montgomery gets us 4 yards, and we just eke our way to the next first down, right? Like, we're just trying to edge this thing all the way down the field. The execution necessary over a 10, 15-play drive is terrifying. Justin Fields, 60 yards down the field. We're going to get one play.
He's got that eye for that.
Exactly. We get Allen Robinson with one-on-one coverage on the outside, and we're going to be able to take a shot on that. And if we miss it 2 times, we hit it the 3rd time, it's not a first down.
Would it shock either of you if Justin Fields outproduces Trevor Lawrence in year 1?
Yes, because of supporting cast. I'm not shocked, but I would still expect Lawrence because of supporting cast. That Chicago offensive line isn't great and has dealt with health problems, and we know that one of Fields' issues at Ohio State was that he would sit back in that pocket and be like, I'm really big and tall, and then you get hit. And so that I think that he might welcome pressure a little bit. And while I think that Matt Nagy maybe has gotten some bad raps at times, I still would not claim I have the most faith in him.
The only pushback I would say to you is,
Go ahead.
the only pushback I would say is, Fields, in my opinion, when I was watching him, I thought he was so much better than everyone else in college, right?
Yep.
I think in the NFL it would be a lot quicker to use his legs. To use his legs as a safety blanket, get out of the pocket,
right,
evade pressure, and really put the stress on the defense.
And if Matt Nagy's smart, he's going to build that out for him.
Matt Nagy, I think, was the offensive coordinator with Alex Smith. I know Alex Smith isn't talking about as being super athletic, but he actually is. And I think a lot of the same principles that they have in that offense, they can do with Justin Fields, but times that by 20, right? And so I think Justin Fields in that offense is going to be pretty lethal in year 1, because, again, I truly believe there's no way he's not starting week 1.
Ben, you mentioned you would pick Trevor Lawrence because of his supporting cast. Right. So I'm guessing you support their decision to also draft Travis Etienne.
That's a bold. Nope. I was talking supporting cast, throwing the ball and pass protecting.
So you don't support Urban Meyer's move drafting Etienne?
Urban said, I'm going to have Carlos Hyde and James Robinson as my 1-2 punch, and Travis Etienne as my third down back. And we're going to be a top 8 team in terms of rushing the football. That's a very nice idea when you're going to go 4-13. Simply.
Very nice job factoring for 17 games played by.
I almost said 12. The thing, right? Do I think Etienne could be good for them? Absolutely. Yeah. But we know at this point that first-round rookie running backs typically they can deliver value on the rookie contract. If we get to year 4, year 5. Their legs feel like they start to get a little bit slower. The body starts to get beat up on. We got to remember Etienne's coming out as a senior, right? And he accrued a lot of carries over 4 years at Clemson. So the tires are a little worn down. If Etienne's great for them, cool. I'm not sure for how many years. And whenever we make draft picks, we want that 3-5-year projection. We want that second contract player. And so, okay, the running back room is loaded. They've got a good wide receiver room. The offense should experience a boost in Jacksonville. And maybe year 1, that does help Lawrence produce. But I do think that pick on a multi-year scale isn't really going to hold up. God forbid, Owusu Koromoa, Trevon Merritt, Christian Barmore, some of these defenders that we really liked who were there at 25 end up some impact players because that Jacksonville defense not too good.
Brentley, you had a little smile going over there as he was saying that. Do you agree?
Well, I had the Jaguars taking Trevon Moore at 25.
Yeah. And
so to get him at 33 would be, in my opinion, a huge steal. I had him, 18th on my board. I think he's a really, really good free safety. He would fit what the Jacksonville Jaguars want to do. He can cover the slot. He can play single high. He can play 2 high. He can do anything you want as a free safety. And so I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's the pick at 33. However, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was even higher than Trevon Moore on my board.
Yep.
And the fact that he's still available blows my mind. And, it's the league is... I thought we were coming around to more of these hybrid players, being a little more creative in terms of less positionless or more positionless football, just getting athletes in space, creating mismatches and solving mismatch problems. But apparently not, because Joke is still on the board.
I need you to know that Joe is just reading Greg Rousseau's prospect summary on the draftnetwork.com.
I'm reading my own scouting.
How's it going for you? How's it going? You like what you read or no?
Not bad. It's definitely a long-term play, but that's just piquing my interest, obviously. I want to know what I said in an unbiased lens, you know what I mean?
Tamara, can I go over the best available prospects for
Yes.
TDN at the end of the first round? So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has been referenced frequently amongst this group. He is our best available player at the end of the first round. Linebacker Baron Browning from Ohio State is a brand guy for TDN. We're way higher on him than the consensus. But he moved from inside linebacker to outside linebacker, and he looked really good in the second half of the season. He's another one of those three-down linebacker types that we really like, and some teams have told him they anticipate he'll play edge for them at the next level. Right. So he went to the Senior Bowl. He looked really good. He's going to be a guy to watch on day 2. Azeez Ojulari is a guy who dropped primarily because of presumably a degenerative knee issue that was flagged at the NFL Combine medical checks. It was a amended NFL Combine this year, but the medical check still took place. Ojulari flagged. Tevin Jenkins is also amongst this group, the right tackle from Oklahoma State. He's going to be great value for somebody early on day 2. Terrence Marshall Jr. was flagged for a knee issue. He had multiple knee issues throughout the course of his time, lower body issues throughout the course of his time as both prep level and at LSU. Trevon Moehrig, who Brentley mentioned, who was also a top 20 player for me in my personal board as well. And then Dylan Raduns, Landon Dickerson, Javonte Williams, Liam Eichenberg, Rondale Moore. These are really good football players left. And I always thought the sweet spot for this draft was between picks 20 or 25 and picks 50, 55, 60. This is where the sweet spot is. So if you're a team that's got a couple of picks between 33 and 50, 55, 60, you got to be thrilled. And if you're a team that doesn't, I'd be exploring what opportunities I have to get multiple picks in that range.
Do the Miami Dolphins have multiple picks between 33 and 55? Something like that? Maybe?
Sources can confirm, yes, they do.
Tevin Jenkins,
okay, yes.
Yeah, no,
yes.
We would like what we see. Yeah, no. I agree with you. That top of round 2 is fun. It's every list you went through, I was like, oh, Dolphins. Like, a lot of those players make sense for Miami's defense. That would be a lot of fun.
So when you look at this short list here of players that Kyle mentioned are still available, pick out 2 quickly that you would think would be really good steals for someone on day 2.
Yeah, so I think the Tevin Jenkins fall, it was like, all right, he's in the conversation for OT4, but most teams view him as a right tackle. And, as the league has gone on, that right and left distinction has become less important. It still matters, but, if a guy's had some experience at left, it should be okay. I think we thought he might slide a little. And then we started getting to the Ravens, right, both of their picks, being like, this is Tevin Jenkins, and it wasn't, you know what I mean? And even when the Packers came on the board, Brian Bulaga, their right tackle, left last season for the Chargers, this is Tevin, this makes sense. Nobody goes for him, and those teams do have legit right tackle needs, so it is surprising. So I don't know if there's something about Tevin we don't know, but to me, that player stands out. And then Owusu-Koramoah, he's a very exciting player for some teams. And then other teams are going to look at him and say, I don't know what to do with a 220-pound linebacker who played safety and was kind of in the nickel and super explosive, but if my defense isn't built like Notre Dame's defense was, which most aren't, it's a very college-y defense, I don't know exactly where to put him. And that player usually takes time, right? It's like Isaiah Simmons with the Cardinals. Great player, great athlete, not the year 1 return you want because he's a tricky player to figure out on defense. So I'm not surprised he fell. But at this point now on day 2, you don't get athletes like this, the intensity like this, and the IQ, football IQ like this. And so to me, Owusu-Koramoah, man, New York Jets, they got Ashton Davis, Marcus May, they're okay. Miami Dolphins make sense just because they would love any sort of hybrid defender that they can get. Philadelphia Eagles, no safety depth, no linebacker depth. He can do both. They don't have a nickel cover man either. It's a pretty bad defense in Philly. He makes sense because he can get on the field pretty easily.
Would you take JOK and be thrilled?
At this point in the draft, I know you're a big Notre Dame girl. You got a soft spot. You like the ACC as well. So
and he's from Virginia.
This was probably the best of all 3 worlds combining for you. Virginia, ACC, Notre Dame playing in the ACC this past year. Yeah, at this point in the draft, I know some teams will probably regard JOK as a safety. Others will regard him as a sub-packaged linebacker. I really don't care what you regard him as. It's the fact that he has value as a pass defender. He can play in the box. He can play on the line of scrimmage. He can play out on the hash. He took the vast majority of his reps at Notre Dame out on the hash as a nickel defender. So for a guy who's 225 pounds, who can run the alley, attack in the run game, he can play in the slot. You watch him against Clemson this past year. He's playing man-to-man coverage and defending passes and triggering and reacting and off coverage against quick slants out of the slot. It's a really good indicator of how versatile he is as a player. And based on the way the game is played, we talked about these tight ends and the impact of players like Kyle Pitts and what they're going to do to opposing defensive coordinators of, geez, they're in 12 personnel, but Kyle Pitts is out there. Do we go base? Do we go nickel? Do we go dime? What do we do? You can take JOK and you can say, okay, he's a part of our base package. We're going to play him in base, and if they line up in empty, then we'll just line him up in the slot and ask him to play some man-to-man coverage.
Sounds like you're having a really great draft experience, especially for the Dolphins.
He was so giddy after pick 18. He wouldn't stop yelling.
Could you believe it?
Sure.
Could you believe it?
Waddle Phillips.
Waddle Phillips.
I was asking. I was like, who was more excited? Kyle about Waddle
Me.
Phillips?
The answer's
or
me.
Josh about his entire...
No, Josh with his whole mock, wherever he's at out
here. Is that Jordan was asked a month ago on Twitter, best case scenario for the Vikings, and he said, trade back from 14, get a day 2 pick, and maybe you get Elijah Vera Tucker or maybe you get Christian Darius. That's exactly what happened. And Jordan went, yeah, it's a good pick.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Yeah, that happened exactly the way I called it. It's fine.
Jordan's been very humble today, especially considering I did come after him for his Mac Jones theory.
Probably why.
But, you know, I'm going to let him have it. He's had a really
What's the Mac
successful
Jones
day.
theory?
He said he wouldn't still be available by 20, and he came close.
He did. I
came
told
close.
you 15 to New England or 19 to Washington. That was the sweet spot.
You know what my favorite part of the show was actually? Because I was sitting in the green room. It was when Alex Leatherwood went to the Raiders. Oh, that's a bit of a surprise. And Jordan goes, it makes sense. He's a senior, Alabama, big-time pro, trench player. And I checked Jordan's final mock, and he's got a redshirt sophomore, Christian Barnes.
I originally had Tevin Jenkins there, though.
Yeah.
I should have kept it.
But I was like, oh, man, he must have had Leatherwood in his mock. He's like, this makes perfect sense.
I knew Leatherwood was going to go in the first round, though.
Redshirt sophomore. Yeah. And I was like, okay, Jordan. Yeah. No, I had Leatherwood to the Colts, which would have made sense as well.
Same.
But yeah.
Guys, I'm super excited for day 2. Day 1 was really exciting. Kyle, you've laid out the land of what's available
Yes, ma'am.
as we go into the second day. I'm really excited to be back here with all of you again tomorrow. But until then, good night. See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Be right back here for more coverage on Rinks.tv.
It's been about a year since you fell in love with me. I'm gonna love you with a song about my favorite feline, Laser Kitty.
I never seen a cat that looks quite like that. She drinks Killcliff clean energy. Don't give no milk to this pussycat. Touch, don't betray your trust, no, 'cause she lays a kitty, destroys the city. To my surprise, she got lasers in her eyes. Good thing that she's one of
my favorite feline, Lazy Kitty.
Well, there's also been legal action taken in recent years regarding the NFL's kind of lack of protection or responsibility for players' brain health. And I'm curious about how you were involved in that, and what was that course of action like for you?
Well, I think everyone takes a very evaluate each individual as an individual, and then you get kind of stigmatized as one of 5 or 6 different types of categories when it comes to looking at your brain. I've had my brain scanned, and I've done the Harvard study, and I've done many of those instances where my brain relative to other brains is not as bad as I would say a linebacker or a running back that is in collisions more frequently than I ever was. So I just think each and every person is evaluated differently, and by their evaluation, I think there's definitely there's positions, and there's definitely players that are experiencing more brain trauma, CTE like symptoms than others, and I think it's those we need to take care of. I think the league is tried to with this protocol now that they have in place, reaching out to families and players and trying to help them as best as possible. Could it be better? Always could be better. We're always trying to tweak it. I think the league is trying to tweak it too. And as an alumni and care for the players that I played with, the guys that I practice with, I think it's imperative that we at least look at that and see if we can try to make the quality of life and the quality of life for all of us a little bit better, a little bit easier. And I think the league is looking at that, and hopefully we can all come to some sort of impasse as far as making sure the game is safer, better, and that the post playing days we're taken care of.
Best ball season is here, and it's bigger than ever. With no waivers, trades, or setting lineups, it has never been easier to have a shot at the $1 million grand prize. Underdog Fantasy lets you draft a season-long league in seconds, thanks to their slick mobile app and state-of-the-art website. And best of all, if you don't love it, there's a $100 money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Draft for the 2021 season today.
The bigger part here is there are so many people that are impacted by concussions that don't play football, right? That's how many other sports, right? You're talking about soccer has a major issue with concussions. Hockey has major issues. The military, obviously, there's so many other avenues, but obviously this being football programming and everybody that's watching being a football fan, you're focused on, what can we do to make the game safer? And how do we do that? And this seems like a really, really good option. So, I'd love for you to kind of give us a scene from the football perspective that, what has changed even since you were in the game? I think it's something that I know I'm 31 years old. I can remember watching football even 10 years ago. I don't remember hearing the words concussion protocol so many times, right? It feels like every Sunday you hear those words. So what has changed since you've been playing?
Well, there's so many aspects to it. I mean, the guys are bigger and stronger and faster than they've ever been. And so, it's funny. I'll go and watch games live now, and I'll be standing on the sidelines, and I'll watch the game and the collisions, and I sit back and I go, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I played this game. I can't believe what bodies go through playing this game. And so you're seeing the level of play just continue to advance. And with that, obviously, the rise in concussions, or at least we're able to, to see it and notice it and take precautions now. And, there's been a lot of rule changes. All with that in mind is that it's a great game and it offers so much to so many, but we need to continually try to make the game safer. And so, taking the head out of the tackle, and some of the rule changes that have been there, some of the way that the NFL's trying to implement it all the way down to the youth levels. And all that stuff is great. But at the end of the day, what we know is you're still not going to eliminate every injury or every head trauma. And that's where we come into play is, okay, we're gotten better at how we take care of it after the fact. And the protocols that we go through once you suffer a concussion, but there's nothing that can really address a concussion. And so that to me is why this is so prevalent and, has a chance to be such a difference maker. And we believe can have huge long-term effects on the game, on individuals' quality of life. And that's what to me is so exciting about it, because people aren't going to stop playing football. It's going to be a part of life. Head injuries are not going to stop. So now we need to advance and figure out what are the ways in which we can help correct that or eliminate some of the long-term effects or the degree that a concussion may impact someone. And so again, I'm really excited to be a part of this because I have a passion for this game, but I also have a passion for protecting what I believe is the greatest commodity in this game, and that's the players. And then, as I just said, it goes beyond that because it's personal for me with my oldest son and some of the challenges that he's had to face.
Freeze sleeve. Freeze it. Sleeve it. Relieve it. Go to freesleeve.com.
As a reward for making Killcliff the undisputed clean energy drink of America and beyond, we've packed in more B vitamins, electrolytes, and killer taste than ever. And as a bonus, we've made the ultimate loyalty program. It's not a cult, it's not a club, it's the Killcliff Cult Club. Tap into special offers like flash sales and exclusive merch